on TV. We are your budget committee, and tonight is our meeting to review the recommendations that the select board came up with at their last meeting, which was held last Tuesday. Why don't I go around the room and introduce ourselves to those who are watching, so they can know who they're being represented by. I'll start. I'm Milt Simon, live at 96 Stackpole Road, and I'm the chair of the budget committee.
Heather, you're up.
I'm Heather Roy. I live on Hollowell Road, and this is my second year as a budget committee member.
I'm Jill Gastonguay from 110 Stackpole Road, and I'm the vice chairman.
I'm Mark Blake, Stackpole Road.
Rod Stimson, Emerson Road. It's my first year on the committee.
Neil Berry, Stackpole Road.
Al Carrington, Day Road.
Jane Rice, Bowie Hill.
John Talbot, Stackpole Road.
So first order of business, a question has been raised. As obviously one of our members is not physically present at the meeting, but is taking place, but is participating via.
Bobblehead.
Really? Okay.
Virtual.
So a question has been raised, and I guess we'll have to rely on the town manager for the answer, but we need to know whether or not she can take part in the voting, as she's not physically present at this meeting. Town manager, Jerry, do you have anything you
We
can?
talked about this at the budget committee. She brought it up to us and with the select board members, and we were okay with it.
Okay.
So she's here. I mean, I think where it becomes an issue is if they're not at a meeting and then they read the minutes and then they want to vote. I think that's where the issue becomes. I mean, I can look into it after this, and then if it's a problem, we won't consider a vote. I mean, but I don't think it's a problem.
No. I think we were more asking just to get it on the record.
Right.
Any board meetings have any comments or?
I think she's pretty present.
Yeah, I think so too.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, at one time you couldn't. I mean, when we were looking at it, but I don't know the rules very well, so I'm fine if everybody else is.
I know when we were all Zoom, we were able to vote.
Right.
True.
So
Can I say what I read about this? Is that
As long as it's less than a minute.
thanks?
You're limited. Yeah. Watch how much time you eat up, please.
Yeah, my understanding is that as long as the public can participate the same way, which is virtually, they have the option to watch on the YouTube video, the public doesn't take part in the meeting itself. They can watch, but they can't participate. And so I'm not attending in a way that they're not able to attend. And so that makes it allowable. But if people are concerned and you guys want to vote, please feel free to do that. And I'm happy to send that link that MMA wrote what the rules were about this to anybody who wants to hear where MMA landed on it.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Does anybody feel it necessitates a vote?
No.
Everyone sort of concurs? All
Let her vote.
right. So the fire chief just drove up. I did attend the select board's meeting last Tuesday, and just can sum it up pretty much in 3 words that they approved the budget as presented. So we just now need to decide whether we're in agreement, or are there any monetary numbers that we would like to recommend
thank you.
to
I
change.
got to share.
So we'll start with the fire department budget.
We only over. Sorry about that, folks.
No, you're fine.
Oh, look at that.
So
Does anybody want to start? Does anybody have some questions for the chief right off the bat?
Well, I guess I will.
Sure. Thank you, Alan.
Originally,
you attempted to keep your budget below $500,000. And I realized that now it's up to 522,000. And I'm just wondering what those specific increases would have been to change it to that extent.
And you probably heard I went 1.7% over my budget, so I'm actually 8,600 in the hole. So that was over. So if you take my budget, the 496, that would have made it 504 plus something. Again, I was being pigheaded with level funded. I really was. I've level funded since 2019, or the fire department has. And when I say level funded, I mean 1%, here or there. I sat down again with the town manager. I sat down with the seniority of the fire department, and we really just went line by line. In anything that we were over, we tried to accommodate. So electric, propane, and diesel is up 32%. If you do the math, my equipment maintenance is up 27% from last year. And I did prepare this for this question, which is good. Just to let you know about equipment and equipment maintenance, even though our trucks are a little bit older, that line item carries things like the EMS supplies, which I did move. I took 10,000 out and put that in. But that was almost 20,000 last year. So the more calls you do, which we're up on volume, the more stock you need. Pump testing is up. These are all under equipment maintenance. Hose testing is up. Extinguishers are up. The ladder certification's up. Apparatus, I have 16,000 specific for apparatus. And I spent well over that. Almost 17 just for apparatus. So I couldn't, the short answer now is I couldn't absorb anymore with $1,000 for the medical director, that wasn't budgeted for. We just sat down, went line by line, and it's really what we came up with. I'm not proud of that, but go ahead.
Excuse me. Line 5014, dispatch radios and communications.
Yes.
What's that 3,500 increase?
So we have a 20% increase in all of the dispatch. So $1,000 just from Androscoggin County to dispatch. So that was about 20-something thousand last year. They're up to 22,000. So again, these are all just increases I just couldn't take.
No, I was just curious.
No, it's all fair questions.
Why that one line item went
Yep.
up? I
Look,
understand diesel and propane, but.
Yeah, no, that went up, and there's licensing involved. And there's actually, for us to dispatch, there's about 3 different agencies. One has to support IMC, which is computers and run reports, and then the other one has to dispatch for. So that's where that comes from. You'll also see right above that, I was called out on personal safety. You can see what a large jump that was. Again, we're mandated, NFPA mandates that every 10 years, we get a new set of gear for the firefighters, just mandated. Every year, again, we inspect them, and those jumped. What used to be 2,000 are now 3,300 for a custom set of gear. I had to buy 4 sets. And that doesn't include just hoods, those fire hoods. They're like $110 a piece. We just got 10 of them. So it's almost $1,000 in hoods.
So Chief, if
Yes.
you overexpended that by the $12,000 last year, now you're looking for a budget the same as the previous year, but you overexpended the previous year. So what is leading me to believe that you won't overexpend that again?
I took, again, this was a deep dive. This was every penny behind the scenes. We looked at who would need gear this year and who wouldn't, and we could get away with 1 set of gear, just the way the rotation is. When you get a grant, and the guys did about 10, 15 years ago, you replace everything. The problem with that is it sounds great, but then it's all in that same bunch. So you try to stagger it with everything. We did that with the SCBAs. You try to stagger. So we're just filling in the cracks, boots, gloves, those type of things. So they felt good, again, fire management, town manager, that we could stay within that line item.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question about,
Of course.
I thought you had gotten grant money that either went to radios or, I'm gonna say outfits.
No, you're right.
So how did that play into this, or is that for last year's?
So we got a wildland grant up to 5,000. So not only do we have structural gear, we also have wildland forest fire gear.
Mhm.
So that's going to outfit 10 members, as I said. You bring up a sticking point. So that's a $5,000 grant, but it's a matching grant, 50-50.
Right.
So these grants, which are great, and we try, sometimes you got to watch it because that's going to cost us $2,500 to receive the other $2,500.
Mhm.
So I have to keep track of that. So that'll take care of all of our wildland gear. But, you know, I know the town had a limited line item for matching grant type of stuff. I know when we talked about generators, it wasn't going to cover generators if we got a matching grant for that. So these are things I have to watch out for.
So if it's 5,000 total, it's really only 2,500 because you're putting in 2,500.
Yes,
we're
and
putting
you'll
in
see,
2,500.
you'll see on the website, the town and whatnot, that it does say, at least truth in advertising, that we received a $2,500 grant
That makes
from them.
sense.
It's 5, but I wanted to make sure that it was truth.
Heather's got her hand up.
Oh, sorry, thank you. Heather has her hand up.
No, I didn't even see it. Heather, I honestly didn't even see it. Didn't see you sitting there.
Hi, Chief. I had a couple of questions. So one thing that I was wondering about is line 5008, where the dues go from $800 to $3,000, and it says that it's a fixed cost. Can you just explain that difference?
That was just placed because there was no money through Trio placed in that budget. I had to take it from other things. So all the senior members are members of the Maine Fire Chiefs Association. That's about $125, you know, for conferences and classes and whatnot. I believe the dues is a $1,000 bill just to be a member of the Cumberland County Fire Chiefs so that we can use their training and burn center. So that's a fixed cost every year. That's $1,000 just for that. So it adds up almost to $3,000 between dues. There's like 4 different Maine Firefighters Association. I hate that cost. That was 37 members at, I think it's gone up to 22 members apiece. It's almost insurance for those guys. And they've taken advantage of that also.
Okay, thank you. And then another question that I have is about fuel, and I'm wondering if the fire department is part of the public works fuel contract, or if they don't mix, do fire departments enter into co-ops with other towns to purchase fuel the way that I believe Calvin was explaining that the public works department does?
We don't enter co-ops, but after, I'm not sure how many months back, after our contract did run out, one of the members at town hall did get us on to the same company for the same pricing for that. As you know, diesel went up to almost $5, but we were a part of that contract. And again, one reason overspending, not proud of it. On December 30th, I took a fuel delivery because we're on auto load, and that was a $1,200 bill on December 30th.
Pushed it.
Yeah, I mean, I had 1,000 left and we were encumbering things, but that pushed me over the top. And then the next day was propane. I think that's a main trick or something that I'm on to now, but those last 2 days, I'll watch out for that. So I hope that answers it, Heather. We're not on a co-op, but we are on the same sort of pricing type of thing. And it is difficult. Calvin does a great job with road miles and snowplow. It's very difficult to figure out my diesel consumption. Every truck is different and call volume's up.
So that's a good segue into my next question. I'm curious if you can help us understand how labor is calculated, because obviously you don't know. I mean, you must be going off like historic numbers to try to figure out, and then like, you know, percentage of increase of calls, how you project what your labor cost will be, not knowing what your call volume will look like.
I can, and I can read it across. So non-emergency, and that's literally roughly we meet every Thursday. So that's roughly 4 trainings. One night is EMS, one night is truck checks, one night is fire training, and one night is corporation, if you will. That's 1 hour for the guys. We start taking the average attendance, and what used to have a low attendance, that's morale, that's membership, are now roughly 12 to 17 members. And it depends on EMS or fire night, but we're averaging 12 to 17 members. That's half the department. So yes, and then I take an average of pay scale. So minimum wage just went up, but I take an average of pay scale and I try to rough that. Then there's emergencies. That's the same 30,000 as non-emergent. EMS calls, again, very difficult to project, but EMS calls actually require less because you have a per diem on, so that's less individuals. So you try to take an average of how many members go to a call times the average hourly wage. Same thing with stipends. Those are those night coverage stipends. You know, we'll pay someone $35 to sign up to drive, sign up to be the EMT that night. Those are almost all being covered. There's a per diem line item of 75,000. And again, that just goes on the average. The per diem is the one EMS member for 12 hours a day. I'm starting to project what a 24-hour, one person would be, a second EMS at night. So 7 to 7 would be a per diem, and then 7 at night to 7 in the morning, trying to see how many calls we do at night, how many calls I have to be in the back of the ambulance, that type of stuff. That's just a projection for next year. Part-time salary, it is what it is. That's 28,000. And that's our allotted for our Diana, or our office manager, who does 3 days a week. She does 21 hours a week. So at her salary is exactly what that comes from. There's 2 stipends. A assistant chief and the deputy chief get stipends, and the fire chief's pay. The long-winded answer is just averages of who goes to training and average hourly wage for labor.
Okay, thank you.
Chief,
Is someone else gonna go? I have a couple more, but I can wait. Some of them have to do with capital stuff, so I can wait for that part.
please do.
Okay.
Go back to the dues line if we could.
Sure. Let me pull it up.
008.
Yeah, give me 1 second so I can pull up
We already gave you 5 minutes.
I thought you'd see the bum knee and give me a distracting. Okay. I have a lot of those. Go ahead.
I understand. So you shared with us what the dues are. I'm just, for the record, there seems to still be an error on the accounting, because it's saying, it's saying 0 on the 22 budget. I believe the actual cost was $2,700. And under 22 actual, it's saying $817.73. And yet we know, because you just stated, that it cost $1,000 to be part of Cumberland County Fire Association. So I'm just questioning why those 2 figures haven't been revised on the revised accounting sheet. And maybe it's a question for Jerry if you want to defer.
Well,
Put him in.
the 2022, as you can see, there was several zeros in there. So that just didn't get into Trio. Okay, that's why originally that was a 0. It just didn't get posted to Trio. A lot of that Trio money was under labor for the budget line item.
Do we know an actual budget number for dues for 2022?
I do.
Is it $2,700? Because I got that from somewhere.
I have,
2,300, no, excuse me, that was 2019. 2022 was
this says 2,300. I have what it's supposed to be.
2,700.
Right, that's what I found.
The 300 increase is what I projected for membership.
So what is the correct amount on the 2022 actual, please?
I've been, because it's a zero sum budget, are you looking at the 817 for actual? Is that what you're looking at?
Yes.
Okay.
Like I said, we already know it was a
I've
thousand.
I've put it elsewhere. So we know that 1,000. We know I spent another 800, close to it, on the fire department. So 18 and 6, 26 is probably actual, 2,600.
So it's safe to say that it didn't get entered, the budget didn't get entered in Trio, so that's why it's zero. And the other 1,900 got
Or
coded
elsewhere.
against another,
Yes.
one of the other things. So
Yep.
it's in there somewhere, it just didn't get coded
Yes.
to Trio as due.
And you can see there was several of those.
So if we were to refer back to this next year or a year after that even, the number we should be looking at, you're stating it should be 2,600?
That's what I spent last year. So going with increases, and again, as you know,
22 actual. I just want to make sure I have the correct number in case we have to refer to it next year.
I think 2,600 actual.
Right.
26.
2,600 is what I'm putting down as actual.
Okay. I'll take it.
So you're confident that the grand total is correct, though? The mix of it is
Yes,
different.
yes.
So we keep talking about Trio, and are we confident that next year, when we see this, that hopefully our posting have been adjusted and it will be more accurate?
Well, you're asking two difficult questions, and I'll tell you why. The fire department, when I enter, is not using Trio. So I'm entering on a different program for actuals.
So who's transferring it to Trio?
I give them a number to post it to these line items, and then usually the deputy treasurer or somebody will post it to Trio. If there's a lot of bills sometimes that I don't see, and they would post it themselves, whether they think it's accurate or not. Sometimes I don't see propane bills and diesel bills and other membership bills. So it could be posted wrong. As you see, Trio is only good as it's entered.
Correct.
For actuals. Also with actuals, and this is, again, up to date, sort of, it does depend on where I post them also.
The fire department posts invoices?
What's that?
The fire department posts invoices?
On my own computer, I do it all. It's completely all myself. Although the office manager does payroll under labor, but what I'm looking at,
Why does the fire department post invoices?
They don't. Read the accounts payable gets done right here.
You're just tracking.
Yeah, he's just.
I'm
he's
tracking,
this.
give it to the staff, and they post Trio. I don't, but the computers don't talk to each other.
So we're doing double duty here.
Well, he's not paying the invoices we are. He's just tracking his own stuff.
So,
Well, it sounds like
Well, why doesn't he enter it in the Trio?
yeah.
He doesn't have Trio loaded on his machine.
That'll be another
We have
$6,000.
employees-
No,
We have employees that do it.
well, I get that, but.
So this isn't anything new. I'm
Right.
surprised.
I didn't, new to me, I didn't know.
Okay.
so wouldn't it
do-
make sense to get, I don't know what kind of spreadsheet you're using to enter it in, but if you just were able to mimic what was going in Trio, that would kind of make sense.
Well, like you said, he doesn't see a lot of the bills
Yeah.
that come here, so he'd only be able to do half of it because he doesn't see them.
We,
So all
we
the
do
accounts
do
payable
try to
happen
mimic.
right here behind the glass.
Mhm.
But if he was able to enter into a Trio and the accounts payable is done over here, once it's put in, he should be able to look at all that, right?
Right, but entering it into Trio, we don't want our fire chief getting into doing accounts payable and stuff because it would take a lot of his time.
Right.
And it's not just a matter of putting in a number and clicking on it. Accounts payable, and in a lot of municipalities, it's handled by the deputy treasurer. That's how it usually works. Unless you're a really big town and he has his own administrative assistant that works full-time, they could help. But you don't want the department head getting into Trio.
No, I don't mean that. I mean, you're already entering something under your own tracking device. So if that tracking device was Trio, and then the accounts payable comes over here and they put it in anyways, if he went back in to track his stuff, he would automatically see what they put in, right?
Mm,
Wouldn't it be under the same program?
no, because then when you run accounts payable, you have to run warrants and the whole 9 yards. There's a whole process to paying the bills, and that really needs to be handled in a central location so it can be tracked. It's not just a simple Excel spreadsheet where you're doing that. That is the accounting system for the municipality. You want to have it centrally located in
Can I ask you,
area.
I defer
Go
to.
ahead, go ahead.
So clarification system, the question is, what may be missing, don't put any words in anybody's mouth, is that Chief's tracking it on his spreadsheet. We're putting it into Trios. Trios has got the ability to do monthly, quarterly reports.
Mhm.
Maybe what's missing, and maybe is Chief getting a copy of this budget for Trio and saying, hey, wait a minute, you got me down for Calvin's Fuel, or you don't show my dues, just occasional, I guess, budget reconciliation is what I'm coming to say.
So what hasn't been happening here is that the department heads haven't been getting a monthly report of their expenses. That should happen every month. At the beginning of the month, here is your February, so they can keep track of where they are. That hasn't been happening here. It's gonna start, because I'm gonna do it, right? But, I mean, we're in a new budget. I mean, that's the way it happened with the municipality I worked at. I would get a sheet every month so I could track. And just another point, the way the numbers got loaded into Trio, that's not the chief's fault. They're not his numbers, they're not my numbers. I mean, you look at the labor line in his budget for 22 and look at it now, you can see, I don't know what happened. I don't know why it got entered the way it is. I mean, the first 2 weeks I got here, I looked at it and said, well, I won't tell you what I said, but it wasn't right.
Well, it looks maybe like workman's comp is in there or something.
Oh, my God,
Right?
right? I mean,
Yes, that's where it was
Right.
placed.
and I asked him about that, like, I'm going, what's going on? I could just tell that the whole entry of the data was really, it was hard for me as the manager to follow the money. I'm still trying to follow it. 6 months into it.
Neil, we're close. Those numbers should be spot on. If I enter it at the fire department and then tell them how to code it, then it should be spot on. It's just exact tracking. Where we differ is there's about 21 line items that you're looking at, but every line item gets split at my computer by 10 more buckets. So it's under that line item, which should equal what you're looking at. I agree, the actuals, but then I can split it from there.
And that matches Trio?
It should, because I am the one that tells them which line item to put it into. So sometimes I don't see all of it.
I think some of the issues we all have right now is understanding the process. We understand that there were some issues in the past, but we're looking at how are things going to be improved in the future. And Jerry's already talked about that, which sounds like that's going to be some checks and balances out there, so that we won't be asking these same questions next year.
How about a question on Trio, though? I believe you said another time that once something's been entered into Trio and it's a mistake, it can't be corrected?
Once you load it for the year, once you load in the budget for the year and push that button, that becomes live.
So
That's
it's
your
just the budget, it's not,
On actuals.
if an actual got entered incorrectly, it could be fixed.
Yeah, you could journal that back and forth, absolutely change that.
You can't change the budget in Trio?
Not once it takes a lot, like, it doesn't take a lot, but like, the Parks and Rec never got loaded at all. There was no money in there whatsoever loaded. So, but there were bills being paid, so you can go in there and you can add the money later through this convoluted journal this, debit that, credit this, and get signed. I'm not a Trio expert on the backside. I mean, I can run the reports, I can load a budget, but the accounting side, taking it from this debit and putting it over in this credit, that's just beyond my expertise in Trio. But it can be done. We had to do it. It took us a few hours to figure it out. We've been taking a lot of hours to figure out stuff to try to make it whole this year.
Other questions regarding the operating budget?
So are you keeping your own spreadsheet just as a checks and balance because the main office hasn't been doing it reliably? Or did you inherit this process from past chiefs in this town?
The process has been inherited. They should equal. So whatever I spend and whatever a line item or bucket I put it into should be loaded into the same line item. Again, on occasion, there's bills that I don't see, and that's a communication breakdown that will be fixed. Jerry talks about it, and there's more checks and balances to come. I know he was going to look at almost every accounts receivable as an extra, just to sign off, just to make sure that the fire chief, the department heads are putting it where it needs to be. I mean, it's really easy under diesel, right? And it's really easy, well, you would have thought, under electric. But, there's some other equipment maintenance. You would think that's about a pumper truck getting fixed. That's testing a ladder. That's getting our SCBA air compressor certified. There's a lot more to it. That's buying an oxygen mask. So we're trying to clean those things up. They just take time. They take time and cooperation, really, and style.
And I think what Chief was referring to with his budget, like he has a line item there, but under that line item in his spreadsheet is other lines under that. Like for instance,
Yeah,
we'll take
makes sense.
Public Works' utility budget. He has cable, internet, propane, all under his utilities line. So the budgets that I'm used to and I'd like to bring here is more of a 3-tiered system where you have the department category and subcategory. So under the fire and public works in here, you'll have fuel, but then you're gonna identify what fuel, propane, heating oil, K1, what, and right now it's not currently set up that way. So if he had to go, or he wanted to know, or I wanted to know exactly what he paid for gasoline, it's a much more, it's not that hard, but you gotta run the whole utilities line for the whole year and pick out all the gas and do the math. Whereas if it was just done correctly, you just bring up that number gasoline and boom, you know what he's paid. So the short story, we got a lot of cleaning up to do of the budget. That's just, it's been hard.
Jane?
I just want to review on the workman's comp, and I think you probably already told me, but I don't recall. So it says that it's per MMA calculations. But is that because it was pulled out from the labor line that it's so huge compared to what was budgeted?
It was put into the labor line. That's where I took it back out of, right? Because it's a zero-sum budget, but that's where it was. There was actually 3 of them: workers' comp, FICA, Medicare. So I don't set any of those. I don't see any of those. Those 3 are up 14.5%. Those come from the town manager.
So
And then he will explain exactly how they're calculated, which I don't see.
So you work with MMA, see in 22, it got loaded. I don't know why it got loaded the way it does, but fire has 52% of our workman's comp. Our workman's comp annual bill is right around $97,000. They get 52%. Clearly in 22, that's a lot less than 50. So I can't answer to why it got put in that way. Where it's put in there right now. As a matter of fact, I got a call from MMA wanting to come talk because they didn't get their numbers last year to calculate it right. So they charged us $16,000 more, which we had to pay until they got the right numbers. Once they got the right numbers, they gave us a $31,000 check back.
Mhm.
Okay, so workman's comp works, you pay what it is. So at the end of the year, if we overpay, they pay us back. If we underpay, we have to cut them a check. But that was one of the first lines I noticed, because I knew that workman's comp wasn't right. I mean,
5,000.
yeah, and so it really made, because when I first got the budget and I looked at the bottom, we were like way overspent just because of the way it was loaded. And I'm asking people, what's going on here? And I mean, we're figuring it out as we go. But that's what happened there. It just, I don't know what they did.
The budget was 48,000 last
What
year.
was-
The workman's comp budget was 48,000 last year.
Okay,
Is what we were told.
right.
So you came in
That's
under
what we voted
budget,
on.
which was good.
Right.
I don't know. I wasn't here. I wasn't
And
here.
I'm just saying.
And that's, you all understand, that's a calculation from them, right? And that's just really, Diana just did it for this year. They want to know how many are on the ambulance, how many firefighters total, how many would go inside, because there's support firemen, there's interior firemen. Milt's like a driver operator, so they want to know the risk of those 37 members, and they attach a dollar sign to that, and that's how that comes out.
It's like a base estimate, and
Yeah,
then whether it's more or less.
Yes, so, if you add an injury, we had one, out of 521 responses, we had one injury at the station that was non-reportable. So, you're talking structure fires and running lights and sirens, thank you.
What's a non-reportable injury?
So that's where you don't have to report it to like workers' comp.
Why not?
Their criteria. There's a whole criteria if it's reportable to workers' comp or not reportable type of thing, like slips and falls and accidents wouldn't be. Back strains on a fire would be type of stuff, but they have their own criteria.
Okay.
our workman's comp is high. We're working, trying to get that down through safety incentive programs and that sort of thing. Have a return to work policy in place. When you do those things in MMA, you'll get some reductions from your rate.
So you've said with Trio that we plan to do a 3-tier system. We plan to get it in, but we're technically heading into our second month of this year. So I'm curious, is it the hopes that the 2023 will have it the way you want to have it? Or you think, so it'll be 2024?
Right.
Okay, so I kind of want to try and just bring it back to the fire department budget, and because I'm sure every budget we look at, we're going to be having questions. And so if it's a Trio error, I think we just have to trust the town. But does anybody have questions about the fire department budget so that we can continue our discussion?
Just one more.
Yeah, go ahead, Heather.
I said that it was capital, but there is an operating expense line that pertains to it. If we get the chief, if we vote to get the chief a truck, there's a chief's expense, and I'm wondering what happens to that if he gets the truck.
So chief's expense is actually a contractual, that's gear, uniforms, going to trainings. I can look up more. That's actual contractual. In labor, I'm paid $300 a month for the use of flat rate for the use of my personal vehicle. So that would go away. So in theory, that's $3,600, and that would, offset fuel if that increased for. And again, I know that Capital said chief's vehicle. I must correct everyone. That's a fire department utility vehicle. That's an EMS vehicle. That's not a Tahoe. That's not a command vehicle. That's a pickup truck or a utility vehicle for the fire department. Just so happens
Okay.
I'll be the main driver, but that fuel and whatnot will be offset by not paying me the $300. Chief's expense is different, Heather. And if you want The breakdown of those, I'll give it to you.
No, that's
Okay.
okay. I thought chief's expense was your payment because you currently use your personal vehicle.
Correct, no, that's,
Saying that number lives in the labor line right now?
yes, it does, yep.
Okay.
So,
Thank you for clarifying.
oh, no problem. Yep, that's under, I found education, clothes, that type of stuff, chief expense, and I think I kept under that, pretty close. I like to look good.
Any other questions? Someone have, someone like,
I know Heather
motion?
had capitals, but go ahead.
Do we want to, I guess my question is, do we want to make a motion at the end of each budget? Or do we want to wait till we hear everything and then vote on each section? I know that we've done it different ways, different years.
Well, the whole thing, without having a draft warrant here, I'm assuming that this 522,470 is going to have its own warrant article. And therefore, I would be voting on that. And as we go through each individual department, I would say that we should be voting on each individual one.
Okay.
My opinion. I mean, because
I
it usually, because it corresponds to the article.
I'll entertain a
And there
motion.
is verbiage on the articles in one of the many computer spreadsheets we got. I forget where it is.
Yeah, the one that's dated 127.
Yeah.
that Kevin sent you has
Do you
some
remember the
same
name?
language, but I don't think there's any language in there about the budget articles.
You're right. That's correct.
So, right.
That's correct.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I move we, I guess appropriate's the right word, appropriate $522,470 for the fire department.
Second.
So it's been moved by Neil and seconded by Alan that we appropriate or raise $522,470 for the fire department operational budget. Any discussion?
I have a question. The chairman of the select board has mentioned a couple times, and maybe my stupidity, I haven't been able to grab hold. In the past, we have voted on like, so much is going to be raised and so much is going to be appropriated, but we're not doing that this year. So how are we doing it?
Well, the ones that are going into the funds that are like the telecommunications funds, going there, that's gonna be, but what we're gonna do is list the revenues and then what we have for expenditures, and the difference will be raised in taxes.
So it's not going to be listed warrant by warrant. It's just going to be like a summary on the
funding
back
source-
page.
The funding source is not gonna be listed by the warrant. Like, in other words, like excise tax and this is going towards public works. It's just all gonna be listed. You have your revenues, got your expenditures, and the difference will be raised in taxes.
Okay, so again, I'm still confused, so I apologize. So under the warrant question,
So
are we going to have transfer of funds, but not saying where it's coming from,
right,
X amount, raise X amount to get to $522,470?
right.
Okay, thank you.
Just-
We are not going to have that.
No, we're gonna list it. And part of the reason is, it's gonna be its own little
So
list, not under each article, but the whole revenue list is gonna be put in the warrant.
Now, why are we doing it that way?
Because it's easier,
Simpler.
it's simpler, accounting wise,
Heather's hands up.
it's easier.
Yeah.
And technically, if you don't raise that money for that particular article, you can't spend it. So like buying the Trio software for 21,000, if we designate the revenue towards that and we haven't collected it yet, technically we can't spend it to purchase that.
So
We're kind of in a really unique situation. This is a very unique situation for me because we're operating on a budget that hasn't even passed yet. So we're spending the money regardless.
So that is there going to be an article that specifically addresses the revenues
Yes,
that are going to reduce the taxation?
yes.
So we have a new warrant number.
Yeah.
Okay. And Heather has her hand up.
Go ahead, Heather.
Thank you, Mel. I have two questions about this. One, the language, the way that the article reads determines whether or not the amount can be raised or lowered or whatever on the floor. And so I think I had brought this up before, but I was curious about how it will work. If the question says to see what sum, then the dollar amount can change. I can't remember the wording for if it's a closed funding article. And so I questioned that. And then also, wait, I forgot what my second question was. Hold on. Go ahead, somebody else.
The revenue number won't change though.
No, but
You-
isn't there
Oh, I remember. So that one, I'm just gonna put that placeholder on that. We can talk about that one. But then the other one was if we do it this way and we get to the end, and I'm just using the number that the select board chair threw out, which was the $200,000 for the undesignated funds, and that's its own separate thing to transfer $200,000 from undesignated, and that's necessary to cover the spending that we're putting out there. What happens if the town votes no to transferring the undesignated, but they've already approved the other budget articles? Then I feel like we're in that special meeting situation that we were in before.
If
I
that,
just wanted to
if that happens, if the people voted not to use those funds, then the tax increase would be even more.
So
It would have to be raised.
So it
They would have to
automatically
raise it
becomes a
versus
raise.
transfer. If you're not transferring the funds, then you have to raise it in taxation.
Which raises a whole bunch of other questions in my mind, but I don't want to go there.
Well, as long as people understand that when they're voting, it's one thing. I mean, usually an article is to see what sum will be raised and are appropriated. Then the recommendation comes from the selectmen and also from the budget committee. The number is not within the article, because usually when it's within the article, then you have a lot of problems. That's why they don't specifically put it within the article. But from what you're saying, Heather, I honestly believe that if we voted down not to use those revenue funds, you've appropriated it somewhere, you're gonna have to raise it in taxation.
Okay.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. I do want to make sure that we're really clear about how the wording on the warrant article reads. If it's a situation where we are allowing the dollar amount to change on the floor.
Do we know what the plan is? Are we allowing the number to be changed on the floor, or is this a set number?
Yeah, it's the way you've always done your town meeting. If that's the way you.
No, anybody can amend the,
It can be
amend the motion.
It's based on the wording.
A lot
So I'm
is-
curious to know, we're changing things with the warrant. So I think that was Heather's question too. Are we changing that also, or are we sticking with the same old, same
We're
old?
just- all we're, to my knowledge, I don't know better than to my knowledge, we're just listing the revenue, just all the revenues, rather than listing the revenue source per article. The revenues are still there and they're estimated, because we don't know what we're using this revenue this year. So even the revenue number could be wrong. We might collect more that year. So it's just an easier accounting just to list it
Mhm.
and go that route. So
Okay.
I know it's a little bit of a change, but most towns do it that way. When I saw how you were doing it, I called up a few of my town managers and they said, I've never even heard of
Okay.
doing it the way you're doing it. They said, just list your revenues and then you'll have your expenditures and the difference is what you raise in tax.
And the plan is to still have the wording so that if a townsperson wants to change the amount, they can put it up as an amendment
Yes.
to change the amount.
It would,
Okay.
it would be more than likely, it would be a townsperson changing the recommendation of the select board or the
Right.
recommendation of the budget committee.
Jane?
I just want a little clarification on, in the past, if they had funds that came from the undesignated, right, that
Mhm.
were transferred over, if we didn't use those funds, they went back into undesignated.
Right.
I just want to make sure that we're still going to have the ability so that it doesn't stay in those individuals' budgets. Does that make sense? Because it's not
So
going to be line item.
It doesn't get transferred into their capital.
It goes to undesignated.
savings. It goes into undesignated.
As long as it wasn't capital, or even if it was capital.
Well,
I
capital
think if
stays in
we-
the reserves,
yeah,
there's some in there,
If
and,
we vote to put something into capital reserves, or if we vote like on the truck, if we vote to spend 60,000 and he's able to find something for 20,000, then that 40,000 stays in the capital account. It doesn't go into undesignated, but all the operating budgets now go into undesignated if they're unspent.
Okay, so I guess my thought was if you had this big chunk of money for the town, because now it wasn't specifically saying that you're putting undesignated in there. I just want to make sure that if the chief comes in under his budget, but because there's extra money, does that give the authority to the town manager to spend it on something else?
no,
Okay.
No.
it goes back in undesignated.
Just
You
wanna make
still,
sure.
yeah, because you still only gave each individual department their budget.
Right.
All right.
So if they go over their budget, even though they're like, well, Paul had an extra 20,000, so I just used Paul's money.
Mhm.
We at next year have to vote to approve that Peter spent Paul's money.
Thank you.
If anyone wants to see what we're talking about, it's on the budget impact spreadsheet,
Mhm.
and it's on the tax impact tab in the upper left-hand corner. Did Kevin do this? Do you know?
Yes.
Yeah, he did a good job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He did.
yeah, he
So
does.
it's pretty simple, and it shows what the designated fund does to, the budget.
Oh, yeah, I understand that piece. My thought was that if it
It's
wasn't
only on the computer.
line by line,
I think maybe, I don't know, do we get
did
one of
that give
those?
someone the authority to spend it somewhere
No.
else? Okay, that's what I was concerned about. Thank you.
I mean, it even really has to pass the straight
No,
face
it's-
test
it's that one.
within their own department, you know?
Any further discussion? Seeing none, it's been moved and seconded that we raise and appropriate $522,470,000 for the fire department operational budget. All those in favor? All those opposed? And I abstain, I historically abstain, because I'm a member of the,
I don't know.
Heather was in favor.
Heather,
She was-
I
Heather
was
was
just
in
making
favor.
sure somebody saw her vote.
so
So it's
the
eight-
vote was 801.
Imagine that.
While the chief is here, would we like to discuss his,
Capital.
yeah, his articles?
Yes, yes.
So I have a question about that.
Sure.
And you kind of hinted at the answer a couple minutes ago, but so this vehicle is not, it'll be driven by you most of the time, but it'll be living at the fire department. So now when you get a call, you'll have to go to the fire department and pick it up?
No. The vehicle will be a utility vehicle. So I will drive it predominantly. I will drive it home. I will drive it to work. I respond 24/7. So I respond from home 50% of the time.
Right, that's one of the questions.
So it will be a chief's daily driver unless he's on prolonged vacation, and then it'll be parked at the firehouse where it's appropriate. If other members need to take it for schooling, for 4 or 5 go in March to a chiefs association meeting, certainly can take it. It's appropriate. It needs to be a utility because it also needs to tow the boat. But we only have one truck that can tow. And as you know, I respond first in on a lot of motor vehicle accidents, structure fires, that type of stuff. So it'll be the chief's daily driver, whoever the fire chief is. And again, contractually, you have to live within 10 miles of the border. There's other parameters. It will not be for personal use.
So the way when in my field, if I'm on call, I'm on call. I can go to the grocery store and pick up the groceries for my family, but I'm on call. I can go and get my hair cut, but I might have a half a shaved head because I was on call. So is that kind of the case with you too? Like you'll still be using it to run personal errands because you're always on call.
I foresee a policy being written above me. So that's at the town manager level for use. I don't know if Calvin has that. I don't know if the town has that. The fire chief might be different than anything else. Always on call. It's
Right.
24/7, never off. The phone's not off. You're on call. But luckily I have a side life. So the wife likes to go to Whole Foods. I'm not taking the fire chief's car to Whole Foods because she wants to go, and I'm being
The
serious.
doors are gonna get dinged.
Yeah, she likes to go, Topsom. There's not a lot of services in Durham. So you're going to have to adhere to a policy and adhere to moral and ethical, character of what's appropriate. And it's not. It's not about going to get a haircut. Currently I do have lights and a siren in my personal truck is why I'm using it. So that's okay. That's a fail-safe fallback on. But if it has to do with Durham Fire Department or any of its attachments, whether that's a mutual aid or a training, it could be used for that.
Okay. The reason why I ask is to get an idea of like mileage that would be put on it too.
Sure, and I
that sort of
haven't, the
thing.
reason I went with a flat rate that is not in my favor, it was just easier at the time for the contract negotiations. As you know, gas has fluctuated high and low. I'm sure I'm on the losing end of that. I don't have mileage because that's call volume. Some weeks are slower than others. We've done 41 calls for this month. Durham's 39 square miles. And I'm at the top of the town going the other way. So we put on a lot of miles. I couldn't tell you which. I can tell you, call volume after that 7 to 4, that normal day really. But I'd only guestimate at miles.
Right.
I will speak in favor of this. I mean, as a personal example, somebody, I won't say if they're drunked up or whatever, took out a pole in front of my property, and chief, when the crews were at another fire, he came over in his vehicle. So I think there is a need, and there are multiple times when people respond where the crews are busy, they're on an ambulance run, they're loaned out to another town. So I think this is a good idea, and I think I'm very supportive of it.
Thank you, John. It's more than getting the chief to the scene. It really is. It's protecting. I usually protect the scene of a car accident. That's 52 car accidents last year, usually on icy, snow-packed roads. I just don't want my personal car to be smoked from the next driver coming in sideways. You know what I mean? There is air. I mean, there's deer in town. It really is at this call volume and full-time chief, inappropriate to be using a personal vehicle. For liability, and honestly, I hate to admit it, but going out of town, picking up people at the hospital, there's a lot of things I do that fly under the radar that it needs a town vehicle with town insurance type of thing. It's moving civilians, equipment, gear, that type of stuff.
Hey, Chief, so why don't you share how you're going to build this, have this built, the pickup end of the
So it's. I tried to keep it cost effective. Either we get a used vehicle or a newer. I'd like to mimic what I have. I have doesn't matter the brand, but a crew cab. It's 4 doors. You can put your gear in the back. We have hose to load. We have gear that's contaminated. So it needs a back. It needs a pickup back or a utility back. I have first aid equipment, paperwork. I have a fire extinguisher in my back seat, wildland gear. A 4-gas meter. I have tools. I've responded first in on structure fires, medical calls, car wrecks, that type of stuff. If I can afford a utility body like a Redding, they're called Redding is the brand that has 3 sort of doors on either side, that would be more equipment. So a defibrillator, oxygen, that type of small hand tools, lighting purposes. So it's a utility vehicle. I'm traveling from one end of town to the other, bringing, when we have simultaneous calls, other members, and again, civilians, that type of stuff. So it will be lettered for Durham Fire. It'll be with emergency lights and a siren, but it's a town asset. It's the fire chief gets to drive it predominantly, but it's a town asset. And we don't have that. every other town, not trying to be like them, has some type of utility from Lisbon to Brunswick. It doesn't matter which one. So you can throw gear and frozen equipment and hose in the back or contaminated. You just do, because you don't want it in the ambulance. You don't want it in your pumper truck. There's no room for that. So it really is a need.
Heather.
Heather,
Thank you. I know that when we had briefly talked about this last year, there was discussion around Calvin's truck being repurposed. I should say the road commissioner, sorry. The road commissioner's truck being repurposed as the fire chief or the fire department's utility truck. Can somebody move that water bottle? Because I'm looking at Chief through a water bottle the whole time. Thanks.
was it an improvement?
Yeah, I'm not sure it was an improvement. Move it back.
So I was looking at the inventory of the town vehicles, and I'm not 100% sure if the 2008 is currently the truck that the road commissioner drives, or if the 2015 is the truck that the road commissioner drives. I'm just wondering, was there extensive discussion about repurposing the road commissioner's truck as your vehicle this cycle? Or did that just get dismissed and we're going in a different route?
No, there was extensive discussion on that. I believe his is the 2015, so he's coming on 8 years old. I know he's in line on his own capital for replacement soon, whatever that's a year or two out. Because he does salt, because he does a lot of plowing, his in the short-term year would have worked, but now it's, high mileage. It has a plow. It's a 2500 series. It's a little beefier than I need. It's really not appropriate for what we're looking for. Talking it over with the town manager, that truck does have rust and it has issues now and mileage. Usually a chief's vehicle is more than a 10-year asset. It's usually more than 100,000, more than a 10-year. Chief's vehicles or utility vehicles, fire department vehicles, get taken better care of. Sometimes they're in the bay, they get washed more, they get maintenance more, that type of stuff. So I can't speak for the road commissioner, but that one just wasn't gonna work as far as vehicles. And I know the town manager had his own thoughts on it.
Yeah, so if we were gonna repurpose vehicles, it should be switched. Where the one that belongs to the fire department should go to Public Works and have them beat it up. And when it's done, take it out behind the garage and shoot it. Versus the way they're doing it now, because the fire department with that new truck is gonna wash it, wax it, it's not gonna get the miles and get beat up. So that's where you'd wanna switch it and give it to Public Works to plow with and that sort of thing. But it really is a completely different animal, really, than what they both really need to do what they're looking to do with it.
Okay, thank you. I'm gonna wanna revisit this when we get to Calvin's budget, capital budget.
which won't be tonight.
Thank you.
Recognize my co-chair.
So this is a question that I ask every year, and based on meetings I'm watching, I might have a partner in crime. Have you guys looked into leasing?
No, so I haven't looked into leasing. So as far as the purchase itself, again, a discussion with the town manager at the time. I have looked, I don't think you all, did you all get the proposals, right? You did, for the
Yeah.
capital project?
Yeah.
I did look into 3 avenues, and again, for people at home, I looked into a donation through business people in town. I looked at state surplus, and I looked at federal military surplus, and couldn't come up with something that really fit the bill.
But do they do leasing of utility fire trucks?
So that's difficult. They do leasing of vehicles because this is a smaller vehicle. However, when you start drilling holes in the roof for antennas and light bars, they frown on that.
Right.
So that's the difficulty of it. As far as the purchase, though, and I appreciate the avenue, I think that's the discussion with the town manager and the powers to be as far as paying for it. I just knew that when I put forth either ARPA or we had money in our capital reserve for that, for fire department for that.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Would you have, this, you mentioned a reading body, would it be aluminum preferably? Because it tends,
To rot
even
out.
something that's in the shop all the time, it's gonna get moisture and start to rust. Whereas aluminum, they're a little bit more, but for whatever reason, 10 years down the road, you could probably swap that out to another truck.
Correct. So I've had the junior firefighters looking at those. We've looked at used. There are several used options in the area, crew cab or extended cab with a Reading body. Again, being more, if it doesn't fit in that budget, we were going to go with a pickup truck, flat crew cab pickup truck. And again, that's not the bigger engine, that's not leather seats, that's not heated, that's, usually the stripped down models just to get from point A to point B.
You get stripped down walls without all that stuff?
Take me shopping with you,
I
you
was gonna
can.
say, I've
Wow.
never seen one lately.
My husband got excited because he was actually able to not get carpeting in his pickup truck thanks to me.
Leasing could be an option. Again, I just defer to the powers to be that would make that decision.
Yeah.
Does anyone know what towns our size that have part-time chiefs or not full-time chiefs? do
Sure,
for this type of stuff?
I do. Sabattis has a part-time fire chief. He was offered full-time, but he's part-time. He actually has a vehicle. Pownell really doesn't count, talking with Jesse. He's a flat rate fee and then per call. But every other fire department around, all full-time, all with vehicles.
Green,
What's that?
Green is full-time?
I didn't go as far as Green. I just did the circle that really touched.
Monmouth is a good match for us.
I don't know that. I didn't look
You know,
into,
they have vehicles.
I don't know that.
Isn't it based on the need though? I mean, versus what other towns have?
Well, the need I would assume would be similar.
I mean, I think that's a rabbit hole, Neil. If I look at it and the fire chief makes 100,000 in Green, does that mean I get a pay raise in a vehicle?
He doesn't.
As far as I know, I'm pretty good with vehicles. As far as apparatus and whatnot, almost every fire department has some type of utility vehicle just to run people around. We don't have anything. I mean, people are taking the brush truck. It's inappropriate to, whether that's to go get lunch or whether that's to tow or whether that's just to run people across town. That's a heavy duty truck. It's a brush truck. It's really not appropriate for a lot of those things. All I did, and I appreciate the question, is the circle that, touches Durham as far as utilities and what they drive.
So I would like to point out to everyone that it was the select board's recommendation, their vote to appropriate and transfer $60,000 for this vehicle from the fire department capital reserve.
We
I
voted-
thought at their last meeting, they discussed it coming from ARPA.
It would be the ARPA money that they've appropriated is in your tax impact spreadsheet.
Appropriate.
It's colored in orange.
According to the,
It's not-
according to
it's not
the
stated.
printout, it stated that the ARPA funds would be used for the exhaust removal equipment at the fire station, for the Quint fire truck refurbishing.
And the
Those would
exhaust.
be the two things for, regarding the fire department that would use up the ARPA, use some of the ARPA funds. But the response vehicle would be transferred from fire department capital.
Okay.
If we're ready, I'll make a motion.
Sure.
Are we voting on something?
Well, we have to, are we gonna agree with the board's recommendation, or are we gonna have or we have a different recommendation?
It's an article, if we want to vote on it tonight. But it is an
Because
article.
it's
that goes-
separate from,
Each
each capital is an article.
John?
I make a motion that, make sure I read this, to approve the verbiage that the selectmen provided, which is to see if the town will vote to appropriate and transfer $60,000 from the fire department capital reserves fund for the purchase of a fire chief EMS rapid response vehicle.
Is there a second? I'll second it. So it's been moved by John and seconded by myself that the town appropriates and transfers $60,000 from the fire department capital reserves funds for the purchase of a fire chief / EMS rapid response vehicle. Open it up for discussion.
Heather's.
Heather?
Do we know the balance in the fire department capital reserve?
Yes, I just saw it. I believe it was,
We all have a sheet.
I believe it was 220.
18,
Or this one?
218, maybe something like that. I'm looking at so many numbers like that.
You're right.
Right here.
Where was that one? Oh, it's right in front of me. Capital Reserve, 221,401.
Thank you. And none of the other fire department related capital expenses are coming out of that account. The rest of them are coming from ARPA. Is that correct?
That's not correct. They are also, the select board are also recommending that 32,800 also get transferred from the fire department capital reserve fund for the replacement generator at the fire department.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Further discussion? All right, seeing none, I'll move the vote. It's been moved and seconded that the town appropriates and transfers $60,000 from the fire department capital reserve fund for the purchase of a fire chief / EMS rapid response vehicle. All those in favor, please indicate so. All those opposed?
Abstain.
So it's voted, Heather, your vote?
She had.
I voted in favor.
Okay, so the vote was 8-0-1. Yes. All right, and so with that in mind, the other, while we're talking about the capital reserve fund, it is the select board's recommendation that we appropriate and transfer $32,800 from that fund for the purchase of a replacement generator.
What's that? Fire.
I'm so confused. I'm trying to find my note.
So on the computer, line 23, it says fire chief EMS vehicle on line 23, but that's really the generator.
Correct.
Okay.
I gotta find the line. It would be, well, line, I'm showing it as line 46 on the budget worksheet.
So did I misunderstand? I thought when I listened to the select board meeting that they chose to push that out. Was that for the town?
Town
office?
hall.
All right.
Chief, did you want to explain, maybe give it, I think you did it at our previous meeting, but this might help the cause. This is a larger generator that is going to be replacing the current 20-year-old generator. Did you want to tell us a little bit about that again one more time?
Sure. The original, I believe, was a grant appropriation, roughly around September 11th, 2001. So we're on 22 years old. It has had preventative maintenance every year. I'm told you can see in your packet, engine hours, 726. I'm told there's not a magic engine hour. It's not 1,000 or whatnot. It's really about repairs. And recently it was failure to start. We've had a computer module upgrade. It is a Caterpillar, so they are still making some parts if you can get it. That's the difficulty of it. But it's failure to start several times. So we're starting to really put more money into it. It is an infrastructure item as far as the firehouse. It is larger than the one proposed for the town office because there will be electrical upgrades. So, if the exhaust Plimo vents pass, that's more electrical that needs to be tapped into there. Garage door, there's just more overhead. And when you have a heating and cooling system and the station, is 60 years old in spurts, the last edition of 20 years ago. So that all needs to be tied in. But the request for proposal, and there'll be 3 of them, the average was the 32.8 on it. That's when they come, they take it, part it out, put in a new one, upgrade the electrical, and that's, certified, inspected by the state because it's a commercial size electrical. So that was sort of all in, but we found it to be starting to fail. It's an automatic switch.
And just, and for clarification, just to clarify what he said. So they haven't gone out to bid for this yet. So if this gets approved and, looking next year when we're reviewing the budget, those who stay on, and you might see a different figure, higher or lower, understand that this is a placeholder. It could end up being a little bit more, could end up being, if it's coming lower, then it might be a little bit less, but.
What size is it?
48.
Yeah, they were looking at a 48 kW
42, right?
from, I think, a 26, but yes, close.
Jane?
Do we ever and this may be a crazy question, but do you ever try to sell it? Or when you said part it out, what does that mean? Do they take parts and sell the parts? Or what happens to the generator that's left behind?
Part of the bid is complete removal of. No, we haven't, I'm not in that side of the business as far as, trying to get $500 or $1,000. No, it's a great question because everybody, yes, this is Maine, right? Craigslist. Can somebody use that? If that's the avenue the bosses above me want to do, we can certainly look into that. Sometimes the towns like this don't like to take on the liability of, used sort of equipment. Now, you can put in sealed bids as is, come look at it. That's just above me. Again, powers to be. I take my direction from, above me.
I'm just curious.
No,
If
it's
you have
a-
something that actually works.
So I asked that question
I already
of
bought one.
contacts that I have in the generator world, and they said for the age of it, because I asked, well, why can't we just go from here over to here? And he's like, for the age of it, you don't want to do that. It's not worth it.
Did you get a quote for 32,000?
I did, yep.
What brand?
I don't have that in front of me.
ESM?
I don't know.
Rod?
So, Chief, we're going from a 26 to a 48.
Yep.
Does that meet the basic needs? Is that size to meet future capacity? What is that 48 getting us?
That was both because in '01, some of that addition wasn't there. So that is upgraded electrical needs. And there should be, I'm told, I'm not the generator expert, that would have more capacity if we either had to add on a bay or, God forbid, overnight accommodations or whatnot, but that would be for future needs.
Right, so we have got room to grow.
There is room, yes. Yeah, we wouldn't be maxed out with it.
Heather, did you have something?
Yeah.
I just had a question about, since this is just a quote, and if it ends up coming in more, how does it work out of capital reserve if we put that amount on the warrant and that's what approved, and then the price tag is more, then what happens?
I think it's kind of like the stream crossing. It doesn't get done.
Jerry?
Well, it's impossible to get that number exact now when you're not gonna buy it until August. I don't know.
So are we sure that we're asking for enough and we're not gonna get in a situation where we can't get the work done because we didn't ask for enough? And do you see what I'm saying?
I do, and that's a great question. I think we put in what the quote that we got was, right, Chief? That's what they quoted us for the generator. So it's really just a budget number, but again, it is a placeholder. It's, we'll have to figure that out when the time.
It really is a good question, Heather, to follow up on it. If the quote's coming higher, how high are we willing to go? If,
Right.
what if the quote
That's
ends
a
up being
discussion we'll have to have.
50,000?
But are we allowed to go higher?
No.
I don't think we are because we approved this amount.
If it's a vote of the town, you're not allowed to.
go higher. It would just be tabled.
If you got a quote, isn't that a quote? Why?
But it
It's only
doesn't-
good for 30
yeah, it
days.
doesn't stick for so long. That's the
Was
difference.
was
Something
that
like
the
that,
highest
right?
one?
We only
32?
got one quote.
Middle, I thought you said.
Well, we had three choices because we used the same company to do the town one here, and they could do a smaller one at the firehouse.
No, I was thinking more along lines with Heather was talking, make sure if that generator is that bad and it's causing to fail that often, we need to make sure that we don't get in the middle of halfway put together and now we can't finish the job. That's why if
Correct.
there was more money,
Correct.
if there was one that was higher, as much as I don't like to spend money, I'd rather be safe than sorry.
Again, when things go out for quotes, different than requests
Right,
for
yeah.
proposals, trying to, I think the town has leverage when we go to purchase. So there'll be a request for proposal. I believe our policy is at least three, when it's over a certain dollar amount, if you can garner three. Sometimes there may be only two generator companies that are willing to bid on it, but we'll try. And then you pit them against each other like, hey, we may have another one coming down depending on votes. If they're all higher, then at least we could possibly step back the kilowatt of the generator. I mean, that really doesn't increase the generator itself. When you go from, 26s and 30s and 48s, that's slightly bigger, but it's not
Doesn't increase
exuberant.
the price much.
It's,
right?
yeah, it's literally, install and electrical and whatnot. But a lot of the infrastructure's there, luckily. So the pad is there, they might have to upgrade electrical. The fuel is there, propane, but again, depending on how old that line is and what they say. But we could garner competition. And to your point, if anyone's business, I think everyone's a business person in here, quotes are very difficult. What used to be good for a year are down to 30 days and they'll put right in it or market fluctuation. I mean, on everything. And that's from a fire helmet to gear, to a generator, to tires. Have you seen even fuel?
Jill?
Joe or Jerry, I just double checked my notes from the last selectmen's meeting, and it was in there that the generator was proposed by the chairman to come out of ARPA funds. So can you enlighten us as to what led to the changes?
What changes?
Well, at the last select board meeting, it was recommended by the chairman that the Quint rehab, the fire department generator, and the public works truck come out of the ARPA funds.
I think I remember why.
And now it's saying that the fire department generator is gonna come out of reserves.
Heather said she remembers.
Go ahead,
that.
Heather.
I think it was because Chief had mentioned that there may be potential grant money and you can't mingle ARPA and grant money. And so if this comes out of reserve, then we could still apply for the grant. I think that's what I remember, but that. could be
Okay.
wrong.
That
Yeah,
sounds right.
I was focusing that just on the town hall generator, so thank you, Heather, that makes sense.
Did you also
Okay.
have a question, Heather?
I was gonna ask if the grant thing was, I was gonna ask if I remembered that correctly, actually, if there's grant potential involved. You said that, right, Chief, or no?
I did. There was a grant potential through county EMA for generators. That was a 50-50 matching. I've looked into it. That has passed.
Okay.
Sometimes they come up. That's not a yearly reoccurring one. I believe the last two were on a grant, but that was after September 11th. And I believe that was a different time for the country. But I just cautioned everyone, grants are fantastic, but we get into the nuances, as I said before, of 50-50 matching, of even garnering it. There's no guarantee you'll even get it. I just didn't want to be on the hook on such an important facility of waiting for a grant or timing or not getting it. honestly,
So I'm in agreement with going this route, and part of why I feel that way is because of what happened last year when we talked about the AC. And so I would just ask, and I know that you will, because you definitely do your due diligence when it comes to these things, that we are obviously seeking out those opportunities, and by not using the ARPA funds to do this, that was part of what the problem was the last time, right? It was that you couldn't mix mingle funds. And so we would have missed our window if we were waiting for approval of the grant dollars. And so I would just like to stay in that lane if that, has been the precedent that we've set before, so that we don't get in a position where there is potential grant funding that we can't use because we've chosen to pay for something like this out of ARPA dollars. That's my input on this particular item.
With that, I'll entertain a motion.
Could I ask one more question? There was a lot of concern, I agree with it, about is whatever it was, 32.8 enough? Are you comfortable that that's, and I hear that the world may change, but if it's not, now's the time to go add 10%.
sure.
And again, I don't want to spend extra money, but I hate to spend, if this is so important, approve 32.8 and have it be 45,000 and you don't get a generator.
John, I appreciate the sentiment. That was my due diligence, getting a quote. I will try to use competition and keep them at that, because I think we could do that on every capital we talk about, whether that's a utility vehicle or, a quint
Answer my question.
or a dump truck. So I will make it happen.
I will make a motion,
Please.
if I can read this correctly. Where the hell does it go? Okay, to see if the town will vote to appropriate and transfer $32,800 from the fire department capital reserves funds for the purchase of a generator.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved by John, seconded by Alan, that the town appropriate and transfers $32,800 from the fire department capital reserve fund for the purchase of a replacement generator at the fire department. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll move the vote. Pardon? Okay, so it's been moved and seconded to appropriate and transfer $32,800 from the fire department capital reserve fund for the purchase of a replacement generator for the fire department. All those in favor of this motion, please indicate so. All those opposed, it's unanimous, 9-0.
Oh, you voted on this one.
And you're allowed to vote?
It's not, I'm not on the payroll. I mean, I'm on a payroll, but I'm not, this doesn't have to do with payroll
I'm
operations.
just teasing.
Right, so Chief, I would recommend DeBlois Electric.
What is it?
DeBlois Electric.
DeBlois Electric?
DUBLOIS, and I would not buy a Generac. If you're going to ESM, that's what they're gonna say
DeBlois.
probably,
Electric. Okay.
because there's better ones out there for.
And not a Generac. Okay.
I'd go with Kohler.
That's Uncle Du Bois, right?
Okay.
Let me comment on that.
He's good. at
I
Generac.
put in a generator last year myself, backup. And I went out to 3 different people. And it was funny. Some of them came in, I said, what kind are you gonna put in? Gonna put in the COLA. I said, all right, that's fine. They give me a price. I said, what about Generac? And they said, well, we put them in and we will, but we have better luck with COLA. So, okay. So the next guy comes in and he's gonna put in a Generac. Okay. I said, well, what about a COLA? Do you put those in? He said, we can, and we will if that's what you want. But we have better luck with Generac. So it's really all depends on what they're selling. Is what I
And
find.
I'm gonna request that this discussion move to another meeting. That's not our role. But our role is to vote on 2 more items that are related to the fire department. And in this case, the 2 requests are attached to the American Rescue Plan, also known as ARPA funding. The first one being the exhaust removal equipment at the fire station. The select board has recommended to appropriate $50,000 from ARPA funds to purchase the exhaust removal equipment for the fire station. Are there any questions for the fire chief?
Let me pass this out to the budget. This is difficult because I prepare for the CIP committee and we meet at the station. I get to walk them through the station and really get to visualize what these are. So I apologize. But what I do have for all of you is yeah, I would have gotten up, is really what I wrote to them. And it's taken the 49-page executive summary of what ARPA should be used for, and I broke it down to the fire department. Is there enough copies, I believe? So, you don't have to read, I'm sorry, Heather, but I'll give you the executive of the executive summary, because I know you were on top of the executive summary of it. Honestly, the recipients can use it for ARPA specifically. Funds, programs, services, capital expenditures that respond to the public health and negative economic impacts of the pandemic. That's quoted. Recipients may use the funds to restore and bolster public sector capacity, which supports government's ability to deliver critical COVID-19 services. And there's more. I actually broke it down to revenue lost by the fire department, which is your revenue. The ambulance revenue goes into undesignated, and I've proven with these numbers that through COVID, the years that wane and whatnot, revenues are down. So that's really where this ARPA funds really started with. And that's what I'm trying to do. And that's why I asked for extra this year. It's because of those ARPA funds. And where they should be used. And I have a copy for you, Heather. We'll get you one.
Thank you.
But I digress. So that was handed out to the CIP committee and explained really my thoughts and the executive summary on ARPA funding. And the fire department revenue has been down because of that.
Questions for the fire chief? I'll entertain a motion for questions.
Mr. Chairman, I move we vote to appropriate $50,000 from the American Rescue Plan funds, ARPA funds received from the town by the federal government for the following project: exhaust removal equipment for the fire station.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved by Neil and seconded by John that the town appropriates $50,000 from the ARPA funding received by the town from the federal government for the purpose of purchasing an exhaust removal equipment at the fire station. It's called a what?
One common name is Plymovent. That happens to be a trade name, Plymovent.
So we don't necessarily want to use that in the article. Are there others who do it?
There are one or two others that just happens to be common terminology. It's almost like a Band-Aid.
It's like Xerox.
Yes.
Kleenex. Discussion.
We're showing our age.
Any discussion?
I have a question.
Yes.
We talked a little bit about something that needed to be done to check the box last year in order to work towards grants for overnight accommodations and that type of thing. Is this the thing that was the box that needs to be checked, that we're not, one of the things that we haven't done?
Because we don't meet the criteria, we cannot apply for this grant. Yes, your memory is spot on. So we don't have enough overnight accommodations. There's probably a large investment in the modular out back to make that so. As I told the townspeople, this isn't sexy, but we've kicked the can down the road. The diesel exhaust is cancer causing. It gets on the gear, it gets on the medical equipment, it gets on the firefighters. We're actually mandated by NFPA Chapter 9, 1500 to capture at the source. So that's at the muffler, 100% of the extraction. We've just been waiting to maybe garner a grant, maybe that's where we're headed, but that's just not reality currently. So ARPA funds, the one-time use for infrastructure, I thought was a perfect time to get this in place for the fire department and for the members.
Jane?
Are there any residual fees that go along with this, like every year to year, that would increase the budget next year?
No. Your questioning is incredibly insightful about it. It really is. No. So it's one and done.
It doesn't have to be checked.
Correct. It's installed. It comes with a warranty. It's actually a basic what it is. And again, the visual for the CIP works. It's just special tubes that run along the ceiling. They come down, they drop right into your exhaust, and they actually travel with you. So the trucks start up. It's all captured. There's nothing you need to do. There's an air compressor, but everything's done. It rides all the way out, and it automatically comes off on the outside, right at the doorway. You can start the trucks on the inside. You can warm them up. You can work on them in the winter months, and you actually save heating costs because now you're not just sucking all that cold air into like we do now. But we are mandated to do this.
So it's like a kitchen hood, like a commercial kitchen.
If you would, but it's on the most basic level, but it is attached to the truck because we have to capture 100% at the source, which is the exhaust.
Like a dust collector.
Yeah.
Is it a vacuum of sorts, or is it
It is a
literally
negative-
just a whole continuation of the exhaust pipe to outside and there's no
It does pull a
fan or
negative.
anything?
It does pull a negative vacuum
Okay.
to the outside, the whole system, so you could
Okay.
start all 6 at the same time. But it does capture it, and it's held on with air pressure on like a rubber boot, if you will, to the exhaust. They make them specific for the 6 trucks that we have. They do all the install. And again, request for proposal. This was the one from Plymouth event that I got.
All right, so just asking a question based on the fact that the public may ask this.
Sure.
You go to a repair shop for your vehicle and they just have a rubber hose they attach to the exhaust and they get a hole in their garage door and they stick it outside. Somebody may ask, wouldn't that just be cheaper?
What happens when you open up the garage door?
Great.
That works when apparatus or vehicles are in park idling, and that's not what we're trying to capture. We need to start up diesel trucks that haven't been started in a day or two, that are older diesel, that don't have the next generation type of DEF fluid and whatnot, and we need to capture it all the way out. So it needs to be attached as the apparatus leaves the bay. And then when the apparatus comes back in the bay, it needs to be attached at that point, which is what it's built for.
Yes, sir.
I think, to be fair to your question though, Jane, there is maintenance costs associated with this. It's a piece of equipment. It'll need to be maintained. It's going to be a maintenance cost in the maintenance line down the road.
So I'm familiar with these over 30 years in multiple states and multiple firehouses, 30 firehouses. Very limited maintenance that firefighters could do. So you are talking about an air compressor, but how much maintenance does an air compressor, really take?
Have you, I just envision this tube in the back of the, like, say, the muffler or whatever, and the truck pulls out and it stays attached and ruins that mechanism.
No, that's a great question. They have a breakaway. They have dealt with firefighters. They know we can break these things. So it is engineered to break away.
If I could do it, it would happen.
Well, and if firemen could break it, I'm sure we'll try.
Before we get into too much more detail, I call the question.
Good. Do I have to do a vote to call the question?
You usually do.
If there's
I don't
no
think it's
objection.
vote, but,
I don't think
That's great. No objection, I'm gonna move to the vote. So it has been, motion has been made and seconded that the town appropriates $50,000 from ARPA funds, which were received by the town from the federal government, for the purchase of exhaust removal equipment at the fire station. All those in favor, please indicate. All those opposed, it's unanimous, 9-0. And we have one more to go for the chief. It was the select board's recommendation that the town appropriates $125,000 from those same ARPA funds to refurbish the Quint, which is also known as our ladder truck. Questions for the chief?
I make a motion.
I
We got to discuss afterwards anyways, right?
Go
So
ahead.
I make a motion that we appropriate $125,000 from the ARPA funds received by the town from the federal government for the following project, Quint Fire Truck refurbishing.
Is there a second?
I second.
It's been moved by Jill and seconded by John that the town appropriates $125,000 from the ARPA funds received by the town from the federal government for the purpose of refurbishing the Quint fire truck. Any discussion?
So my understanding is by doing this, we keep the truck for another 7 to 10 years. Which means we postpone what we replace this vehicle with and that lovely discussion. So I'm all for it.
When, I'm sorry, when on the, and it's probably here right in front of me, when was that truck scheduled to be replaced or updated?
Standard, so that's a 1994. Standard in the industry is 30 years. So that's next year. It would literally be scheduled to be replaced.
So was that on your 5-year plan?
That's always been, actually, it had been moved up. So I inherited a capital plan. And when I saw that and the price of quints, even used quints, I last year moved that out and talked about rehabbing it. That's where this whole thought came from. I've done it before in other fire departments or been a member of that committee. It's easily done. I've contacted 3 independent parties just to confirm that it can be done, that the money would be in a good investment and it would last 7 to 10 years. As I have down here, the mileage is low on the truck. It's got 25,000 mileage. Engine hours are low, pump hours. I've had an independent heavy truck mechanic look at it. It gets certified every year by an independent for the hydraulics and the ladders. They were astounded of the condition of it. And I have a local vendor out of Auburn who actually works on it and really believes that investing in that prolongs any purchase or the life of the truck. To answer your question, 30 years is always the standard of an aerial apparatus, a ladder truck, if you will. This one happens to have everything. It's a pumper, a ladder, a rescue. It's more than just your basic. I know, I'm a salesman. Go ahead.
So I was against this truck when we first got it. and
Sure.
there's Many.
That's education and that's
arguments.
okay.
But so on the 5-year plan, was this due next year, or are you just telling me that it was due next year? What was in the plan to have this done? When was it scheduled to be replaced?
Honestly, if I recall, it was, and maybe Mill can help me, it was previous to my hiring that they wanted to, when they purchased the used, they wanted that to last 5 to 8 years and then upgrade from there. And that hadn't been done by the previous chief. But on all the historical committee readings, they wanted to use, that was their foot in the door, is to buy a used apparatus and then upgrade it from there. Am I
I
close?
can't remember the exact dates, but there's no question that the previous chief moved it back on the schedule.
Yes, and then I don't think it was ever offered that you could rehab this truck. And for 10 cents on the dollar, you can rehab that truck, again, by independent contractors. To prolong it. I believe in it. I'm in favor of it. The senior membership is. The same people that put that truck together and really bought that truck are still in favor of rehabbing it and keeping it for the purposes.
Cheaper than $1 million.
Yeah, I said $1 million. It's easily 1.5. Let me throw some people under the bus.
Can I call a vote?
There you go. I'll take a vote.
I mean, it's 8:16 and, I mean, I think people have made.
I got just one question.
Sure. No, this is important. It is.
So you're saying, if we don't do this, the current truck, it's gonna take if we have to buy another one, it's a 1 year build delay
At least, yes.
at least. So if we don't fix this thing, we're at jeopardy of, if the current one breaks, we got nothing, and it would take a year to get a replacement.
It's, I know, yes, Lisbon, those numbers have prolonged. Lisbon just got approved and spec'd out 2 pumper trucks that are more than 2.5 years out. Ladder trucks start at $1 million and they go up. If you replace the one that we had, because it does 5 things, you're easily at $1.5 million in years down the line. When you start thinking about, oh, maybe we could, just rely on our neighbors. Currently, Lisbon's ladder truck is out of service, so we're covering Lisbon. They are relying on us. Freeport's has their ladder truck. They've gotten into the several fires we've been doing the last 2 days. They don't carry water. It's not a Quint, totally different truck. Durham is protected by this, and quite honestly, it's protected frequently. So today, when we had 2 trucks in Pownell at 3:00 on a structure fire, our Quint was our backup, engine 21 and the Quint protecting the town. And that actually happens frequently. It happened 2 nights ago when we were in Freeport. I mean, that's an important apparatus for Durham. I believe in it. I've been around the country in a lot of trucks. It's a special piece of equipment that you own that I'd like to continue to invest in.
Thank you.
All right, so John's request to move the vote, it has been motioned and seconded that the town appropriates $125,000 from the ARPA funds received by the town from the federal government for the purpose of refurbishing the Quint fire truck. All those in favor? All those opposed? It's unanimous, 9-0. I believe we're done with you, Chief.
That's a win, Mr. Chair. That's a win.
Not to be rude, Chief, but
Get out.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you all for yours and your consideration.
And I'm curious, the knee, is that going to increase our workers' comp next year?
Non-reportable. Non-reportable.
Well, I hope you heal well.
Thank you.
As we move on to administration, would we like to discuss how late we'd like to go this evening? So we have a time in mind.
Good to see you too.
9:00, 9:30.
I don't want to go past 9:30.
We have a second meeting scheduled for Thursday, and the purpose of that meeting would be to finish whatever part of the administration's budget we don't get through this evening. Plus, we're going to do the public works. And since we've only scheduled 2 meetings, well, we have an option of doing a 3rd meeting, but we decided to do it in 2. So
I think we should try to go for 9:30.
9:30 sounds good typically? All right. Now, so a little over an hour, we'll go to the administration.
Going to the big one? Okay.
So we'll do the town office, all that, we'll do all the smaller accounts as time permits. I mean, there was one piece of information, Jerry, that you were gonna get back to us on. A question was raised at the joint meeting regarding line 2502 insurances. And you were gonna report back to us.
Yeah, that's our casualty insurance.
So it's just one insurance?
Yeah,
It's our casualty
yeah,
insurance.
yeah.
Do we have more of a plan for labor? Or
More
is
than,
it still a little bit up in the air?
it's still up. I'm still working with the board on the direction we want to go in, either backfilling it or outsourcing it. But that money would cover
Okay.
either direction we go.
So one question that I have with the labor is one of the reasons why it was requested last year to hire a part-time deputy clerk was not only to give the town clerk and the deputy tax collector treasurer time to do their reports. It was also to help cover sick and vacation time.
Mhm.
And so one question that I have is why are we entertaining the idea of moving that person to full-time versus hiring a second part-time person? And therefore broadening our ability to cover sick and vacation time, especially if we're considering outsourcing the accounts payable and things like that.
So it's been a long day. So can you ask that again? What do we?
Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
I didn't follow.
So you want to turn the part-time position into a full-time position.
Correct.
Why not have two part-time positions?
Well, they're hard to find. They've got to be trained. We already have this person trained. They can step right into the role, and we really need another full-time. I mean, we could do that, but I just don't think you're going to spend more resources training them. And if they don't like it, they leave, that sort of thing.
And so that leads me to my second question. The deputy tax collector treasurer, accounts payable payroll person. We are now looking to take accounts payable and payroll and contract that out.
We're looking
So-
at that, yes.
So if we go that direction, why is that position still full-time when we've taken out half of their responsibilities?
They're struggling to get the work done as it is. Joe and I did an analysis on what we need for help in there, and Joe can kind of speak to this if you want, but
Yeah, that's kind of
It's-
my first question was if we made any progress. So I'd love to hear that.
yeah.
So we started having a conversation about like a manning plan, which is
Right.
what I would be used to doing on my other job.
Yeah.
So, I used a tool that actually, you load in what it is everybody's doing, not as an individual, but just the job function, right? The clerk's function, is the window essentially.
The deputy clerk.
Well, the window work itself adds up to the number of hours in the total time frame the window's open. So that's 4 days a week for 7.5 hours or so each day. So you start multiplying that out by 52 weeks and you get a number somewhere up in, it's over 3,000 hours. I didn't open it up here, but so you end up with this job function where you have two people needed at those windows for X amount of hours every week, 52 weeks a year, minus the vacations and what have you. But you end up with a flat double person up there all the time. They've been figuring out that they're up there 90% of the time at the window. They're not able to get the other jobs done that they still have. There are other functions that they do on both, I'll say, job positions. The actual clerk does other things other than the window. So does your deputy treasurer, even if the deputy treasurer has a reduced role. So you end up in the aggregate, when you start figuring out all those things, voting, absentee ballots take a lot of time. Jerry can.
November,
more than me.
Or in October,
So when you
actually.
start adding all those hours into a level loaded manning plan for this town, I came up with over 4 people needed in that back office to do all the jobs. I sat down for about 3 hours at a gross level, just looking at the hours that everybody's here and what they're doing at a very high level. And that's where I came out with over four people. It's like 4.5 people.
So for full-time equivalents?
4 full-time equivalents.
Yeah.
So Jerry's, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jerry, that what you have in here is around 3.5 time equivalents in this budget right here.
Right.
So he's really trying to go after 3.5 times to see how they do, so he doesn't have to take that leap. Because I mean, the last thing you want is have too many people in the office doing, not being able to do work, right? You want work for everybody. So, you know, when you start looking at a manning plan, you never wanna hire too much, right? So I think going in at like a 3.5 manning level, which is what he's proposing in this budget, compared to what we're figuring out is more like a 4.5 person amount of work that goes on here on average, then that's probably a good place to be.
Does that include the town manager's
It
position?
does not. I did not include the town manager. I did not include the fire chief. I did not include any of the other employees. I'm just purely looking at what goes on between the window and what the clerk normally does, and then what the deputy treasurer would do for like reporting out. Because those reports would still be a task that would be
In theory, it sounds good, but just as a old man who's trying to process this, you're talking about additional people, 4 people, and one of those positions, which was a full-time position, their workload is going to be cut in half if we contract out. So we have one person doing half the hours, and you're proposing an additional 1.5 people. That just doesn't make
I'm
common
saying that
sense to me.
The manning plan shows that that's how much work they're doing. It doesn't mean that you need the extra person to do all that work. Right? It's an hours
It
thing.
lines right up with the
Yeah,
data that I gave you folks with other towns that have the same population with the 2 people running the counter. Typically in a town, I mean, how many of you have gone into other towns to see how they operate? Usually the deputy, the clerk and the treasurer typically don't run the window. There's counter help, and then they relieve the counter help when they go to lunch. That's what that showed when I gave you that
How have we possibly survived up to today doing what we're doing? How is it even conceivable that this town has been able to operate doing what we're doing? I know that.
Well, I can tell you,
I'm sure closing one day a week has helped.
I can tell you right now that they're so stressed right now, they've all talked about leaving. So you do with it what you will. I don't know what to tell you, but they're taxed. And
Well, they're also
getting-
taxed because we're missing a person right now.
Well, even before though, they were taxed because they weren't able, they were running the windows so much, they weren't getting their BMV reports done, their dog license report done, the inland fisheries, and they're struggling, and they're voicing that to me. I think the last person you hired said you needed more help. I think Mitch said you needed more help. I'm saying you need more help, and none of us are getting listened to. Eventually, you're gonna have an empty office again.
I'm having a hard time buying 4 people too, because for years we had a person out back that could step in, and we had 2 out front, and it seems like we always got everything done. I'm having a hard time thinking we gotta jump up 2 people.
You went to a different form of government now, so,
I know that, I disagree with that, but I know that's where we're at, so we gotta move forward.
right, so that's just, go ahead, John.
Voting for the chairman. Thank you for,
Yeah, right.
I'm now confused.
Heather, you're next.
It is confusing.
I'm sorry to cut it together. Well, this budget is for 3 people. I'm not sure where
Well, the other half is these people doing IT stuff, but that doesn't take them the full 20 hours to do what they were gonna do. So I was gonna try to get them out here to work the window to relieve these folks for lunch and vacations.
Okay, so that's where the other half.
That's the other
That's
half.
the other half. I
Exactly,
remember
and
that.
it's always been that way. It's been that way when I was hired.
The IT people are qualified to do that?
You just swear them in as oath, as a clerk and
I don't
treasurer.
mean that, I mean, they could actually physically,
They get trained just like anybody else, yeah.
I don't know, I'm having a hard time believing we need that many people.
Well,
And doesn't it make them now employees? They were contractors.
well, but that was discussed too, and they gotta go on the rolls as part-time
So
employees.
now we're paying their FICA and med and all their taxes, payroll taxes.
Yes.
In your budget, Heather's turn.
Go ahead, Heather.
I was curious about how Wednesday played into Joe's hour count
Mhm.
and needing the 4. Did you take into account that the public is not in the office on Wednesdays when you figured that out? You did.
Yeah, this was just based on hours. Actually, he used 40 hours, and right now they're here only 36. So if he actually used the 36, it's gonna drive the employee up. But that's not what I'm looking to do. I'm just looking to get by with what we have without losing the help we have, because they're not getting it done. They're not.
The other question that I had was in reference to the IT people. I'm confused about whether or not that's one position or two, and whether it's 20 hours for both of them, or if they split 20 hours.
They split.
The way we talk about them, it's like a dual thing, but I feel confused by how that's structured.
Right, so they're split the 20 hours. It's a 20 hours total. And it used to be a full-time. I don't know who sat in there before.
You don't want to go down that road.
Yeah, I
You're
mean-
getting much more better service now.
Right,
It wasn't
Right, and-
full-time before, though.
it was pretty close, I thought. That's what they
The school-
said.
No, the school had a full-time IT person. We didn't have one here.
What's that?
The school had it.
Yeah, I didn't think we had
Not
it.
here.
I was pretty sure I was told that whoever that was getting paid benefits and everything.
I don't know.
I don't remember it, but
That's
Remember
what I was
we
being
had,
told,
but-
right? I don't, I'm new, so
I don't
I'm
remember.
trying to figure it all out myself.
And the reports that you say that they have, I'm just trying to learn their position. I'm not trying to nitpick. I'm just trying to understand better. The reports that they have to do, are these daily reports?
Some of them are weekly and some of them are monthly and some of them are quarterly.
Okay, so on Wednesdays, we're not distracted by the window. Are there other distractions on Wednesdays? Because I thought this building was closed and it's just them here doing
Payroll,
their job.
accounts payable, and getting caught up with those reports. And there's quite a bit of like chasing stuff right now that was done wrong. And I don't want to get into all the details here. I'm
So
just
that does lead
telling
me
you that-
to my last question, and then
Yeah.
I'll promise I won't ask for a little bit. How much of what we are thinking about right now, and I know they're working hard to get trained and figure everything out, but how much of it is the fact that they're only at 80% trained level or 60% trained level? I don't know what percentage they're at, but how much of it is needing to get them better trained, and how much of it is them just not having enough time in the day?
What it is that when that window gets busy, like Friday, they did nothing but that window.
Mhm.
Today was a kind of a light day, so they got a lot of stuff done. And it just ebbs and flows so much where they don't get a lot of time away from that window, and there's no one to do the work that they need to get done. I mean, they're working kind of late. I had to get after them the other day to leave because you're going past your hours. And they're like, well, I got to get this report done. I'm like, well, it'll be there for you tomorrow. It'll be late to the state, but it is what it is. I don't know how else. I don't know what else to tell you folks.
So
I
I
really
am
don't.
curious, is some of that because they're still learning how to
Yeah,
do
'cause
the
they've only been here
reports?
like a year and a half, and it's a lot of work.
If I just amend my earlier outburst. So going back a few years when we had an administrative assistant, the buzzword at one of these meetings was cross-train. And so both of the positions, the clerk and the treasurer, as well as the administrative assistant, were all cross-trained. And thus the administrative assistant could come out front and help, and well, you all know what the meaning of that is. So in actuality, back then, there were 2.5 people who would be working the window, and so now the proposal is 3.5 people. Okay.
And I'm assuming that's in part because they're not trained as well as those last 3 people were.
Right. Yeah, I don't know how well they were trained.
My question is, because maybe I'm getting a little bit frustrated with this. At what point in time, and they're great people. This isn't a criticism about the people in there, but one's been there 18 months, one's been there 5 months, 6 months, whatever. At what point are they trained? I mean, the 18-month has gone through multiple cycles, the 6 month. So what training haven't we given them?
Well, the 6-month person hasn't had any training at all.
Well, there's some OJT. I mean, I'm at a loss.
Well, right. I mean, that's just I'm on coming into Durham after being in public service. I'm on the job training here in Durham. I mean, it just doesn't go away. I mean,
I got you, but there's,
So,
if you do the job for 18 months, and I know they have, because they're great people.
right,
I guess I've stopped buying, they need to be trained because they've been here an extensive period of time.
like the clerk doesn't really run Trio, but she's picked up the payroll, so we got her cross-trained. Now she's cross-trained in the other person that's been here 6 months, when we can do it. When they can do it, like tomorrow, they'll do payroll and both of them will be sitting down doing payroll because one's training the other. I mean,
You know, the frustrating thing about this all is we have Joe's come in here and he has the expertise on how to collect the data on it. And we're sitting back here and we're second guessing. We don't work here every day. And that's my concern. We have the ability to ask these questions and you're getting the information from somebody that has done the analysis. And now we're saying we don't trust the analysis.
and can I just say something since I've been here? I gotta get this out because it's very different. I'm not used to it, but, and please don't be offended. But there just seems to be this cultural distrust here in Durham where just, I mean, I don't know what to do with it. I mean, I don't feel like I'm trusted. I don't, and I don't know why. And it's troublesome. I'm not here to stick it to the man. I'm just not. I'm here to try to do a good job and do the best we can with what you got to work with. And when I came in here and I saw the budget, the way it was laid out and the way it was presented, I knew I had a lot of work ahead of me. I just don't know what to make of it. I've got culture shock. Seriously, and I don't mean to be that way, but I do.
Well, I can give you some answers to that, but I won't do it here.
Yeah,
I'll give you some private.
okay,
So, Mark, I'll recognize
okay,
you.
that's fine, but
Recognize Mark, please.
I feel it.
For me,
Yes, Mark.
And I kind of agree with you. I'm not beating up on those people. I'm not even beating up on you.
Right.
They came and applied for a job and they got it, right, wrong, or different. I don't have anything about that.
Mhm.
Same with you. To Alan's point, I get what he's saying, but up until the last 2 years, this town run pretty good and everything is pretty well up to date with 3 people basically. And I'm not saying that we don't need to grow, but you're talking about 4 people and hiring an outside company for 70 grand. That just doesn't, I don't know, it just don't add up to me.
I'm not talking about the 4 people. The data showed the 4 people. I'm going with 3.5.
3.5 and an
But
outside
that's
company.
So is
that's kind of what was here, and I kind of want to see how that's going to play out to actually see if it's enough. I mean, Joe uses this program in his work down to BIW to staff him, so I wanted to get the data. Again, I showed you the towns, and Mark, you made a great point in a meeting that, well, we don't have the tax base to support those employees, and I said, well, we're still registering the same amount of vehicles, and you recognize it. I'm not looking to employ all of the people these other towns are because they have that tax base. But what I'm looking to do is keep the staff we have and not overtax them. That's where I'm at. And I heard it several times from the clerk that Gray was going after her for more money. And she was like, I don't know what to do. I said, you just stay right here with me. We'll get this figured out. So that's what we're up against. And if you're not going to believe it, I don't know. I don't have anything else to say. I don't know what to tell you.
Rod, did you have a question?
Just for a clarification, Jerry, if we approve these positions, I think there was some conversation a while back about changing the office hours, the window hours to go to a 5-day. Would that happen or?
Yeah, because it's the 30. I would like to open up on Wednesday because we're here, and that will spread out the demand on the window over another day, so they won't be lined up at the door on Thursday. So yeah, they're here. We can do that. We can try. And again, I'm coming into an organization that didn't have a whole lot of structure. Like the chief and Calvin weren't getting their expense what they were spending, and that's not good. They need to have that report. And there's some other things that I'm not going to get into the details here. It's not the place about the budget. example, I have two numbers for undesignated funds. One, the auditor says we got 1.9 and Trio says 2.4. Pick one. Pick one. There's other things that I'm not going to get into the details here. It's not the place. You just have, again, you're not trusting me.
It's not,
You-
I'm going to speak personally. It's not that I'm not trusting you. Okay. We're learning a lot this year from you.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
In hearing how, and people can say I'm messing with my words, but in my opinion, hearing how messed up the accounts payable, accounts receivable, accounting has been is definitely concerning to me. And I'm glad that you're straightening that out. And I'm glad that you have a path going forward to get that straightened out. And I do think that we have to stop kind of going, okay, well, the budget was this and the actual was this, and just trust that it is a Trio screw up and the bottom number is still the same. Part of the culture that you're coming into is that it seemed like Durham was like this for several years. And then the past 2 years were like for government growth. And I think it's not a mistrust. It's people that I've spoken to, we're all in shock and kind of a why. And perhaps we don't feel like we've gotten a good definition of the why. So I'll just get off that there. I do have one question.
Yeah, sure.
So 3.5 people.
Yep.
Is that 3.5 people plus possibly a contract, or the contract
includes-
would be
no, that
considered
includes.
one of these people?
One of those people.
Okay, thank you.
And I just
No,
up and,
that clarifies things.
Yeah, but-
Yeah.
That's not what you said.
well, that's what the budget says.
Yes.
Right,
That's what the budget
Back in order.
says.
Are you finished? Jim?
I'm done, thank you.
Let me just go one more thing. So your reserve account balance here that I put together for you.
Yes,
When I put this together, Kevin come in and he said the recreation, there's no way that, well, it was the telecommunications fund because I had it bad and he wanted to look at it. So he said, where did you get your numbers? Well, I got it from the audit report. Okay. So he said, well, we looked at the audit report and there was in that audit report, there was $12,000 that were dispersed to recreation. And Kevin said, we've never dispersed $12,000. I said, this is just what the audit says. He says, Jerry, I can tell you, we've never done it. And I looked at him and I said, I believe you. So I've been chasing numbers for almost 5 months. No, not almost 5 months, trying to figure out. Again, I just told you, the audit report says 1.9 million in undesignated, and the Trio says 2.4. So when you take things out of undesignated to put it into the budget, was that happening on the back end? I don't know. I just know that we got two different numbers, and I just want to get to the bottom of it. That's all. And because as your town manager, you're going to be asking me what numbers are, and I'm afraid to give them to you because I don't really know them.
Heather,
And-
you're up next. You're all
So
set?
I have a couple things. First, Jerry, I'm sorry that you're feeling like you're not being trusted in this process. I think that you display transparency that we all appreciate. Our town government went through a couple of years with COVID where our entire form of government changed, and we weren't in a town floor meeting situation. I think there was a lot that happened that people felt like they weren't educated about the process, and that they weren't involved or had the opportunity to have input in that. And that has led to this culture of constant questioning. And I don't want you to take that personally, because I don't think that has anything to do with you. I think it has to do with the position that you're sitting in, because a lot of people in town weren't in favor of going that route. And so now that we're here, they want to know did we make a good decision? Is it worth it? The other thing that I wanted to say about the recreation fund and the $12,000, during that process, we switched the way that we did our accounting. We used to have separate accounts for everything, and it went on the warrant that we were going to turn everything into one account except for telecommunications, and I don't remember what the other ones were. And then anything that wasn't spent went into undesignated. And so perhaps prior to that happening, money was going into an account earmarked as recreation. Like we have that old home days account, and we had, all these small little sub accounts. And so that could be why that account exists and why there's money in there. Maybe that never got transferred out of there when that vote took place. I don't know.
Right.
But I've said it before and I'll say it again, that I appreciate your diligence in not just trusting what the papers say and making sure that you do have the ability to answer what the balances are and where they come from. Because I've said all the time, and I know that this is like micromanaging. Like, I want to see the receipts. I'm just trusting a spreadsheet that somebody entered numbers into, and I'm making decisions as an elected person based on these spreadsheets. So, thank you.
You're
I know that was long-winded. Sorry.
No, that's fine.
What was, we were talking about the thing. Okay, so Jill asked the contracting out, that counts as one position.
Yep.
And so this budget builds in for 2.5 more in the office.
Yeah, clerk and the part-time going to full-time, the deputy treasurer, and I'm gonna try to utilize more efficiently the IT people.
John.
Okay. And do we have a number? Have you gotten a number back yet on contracting out, or are we still like in limbo with that?
Yeah, we're still looking, but that's still up in the air right now.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
John.
Mr. Chairman, I think the question is, do we accept that there are major issues in, not quite yet, that there's more, I guess, for the budget committee. Do we accept that there are major issues and that 3.5 entities, whether it be an accountant and 2.5 other employees? That is, I think, the question, is that we're here. And you already said that it's screwed up. So I think as a board, we have to say, okay, do we accept that? And is 3.5 entities going to fix it? And that, I think, is the question before us.
Yeah, so let me just sort of clarify though, because when I got here, there was 2 full-timers and a half-time and a half-time. So you really had 3 full-time equivalents, right?
Well, we considered telecom to not be part of behind
But
the
it's part-
window table.
Right, no,
But
but just.
I'm just letting you know, like the
know.
townspeople didn't consider them to be a part-time.
Right,
window
but
clerk,
they-
just so you know.
Right, so, but the money was coming out of the budget, so let me
Mhm.
finish my thought.
Yep, sorry.
So you had 2 full-timers, we had a half-time behind the window.
Which is new.
Yeah, when
As
I
of
got
last
here,
year.
right? And then you had halftime and,
Mhm.
so that's 3 people. I'm only asking for another half a person when it comes down, when push comes to shove.
And I think the question is, do we need 3.5 entities? And I think maybe we've discussed that enough. I mean, we're probably at a point where we can make a decision, or there's more discussion to be had, but do we or do we not? And then we need to get on to the rest of the stuff, and I'll be quiet.
And you said that additional half person, so it would be 3.5 people, but that includes if we go out to bid, in contract for.
Either way, that
Payroll.
deputy will either get hired in-house or go contracted out. So it doesn't change the budget or anything.
Jane.
No, I think Mark was before me.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, that's basically what I was trying to clarify, because there was pretty big confusion about it from the meeting the other night, and that it seemed like they was looking at 3.5 plus the 70,000 outside.
No.
That helps a little bit.
Yeah, it does.
I'm not sure if I agree 100%,
Right.
but that helps.
That's okay, Mark.
However, if you outsource that takes away someone helping at the window.
It also takes a lot of work away from them so they can spend more time at the window and doing their other
Right,
reports.
but
You're
that's
taking a
normally
lot
that
of,
one, that's normally the one person's job though, that's,
that they were having a hard time doing.
right.
It brings in
by
an
itself.
expert to get Trio correct.
Okay, so in my craziness, I'm thinking, all right, if we have a problem when we need to fix it, is this a short-term fix to get, could a short-term fix to fix the books or to, that's not a good word. Straighten the books out.
To help me.
And train on Trio, could that be a kind of like a stopgap in there versus hiring another person ongoing? Can you get the service in temporarily or
Yeah.
I don't know, once
I think-
once the books are stabilized,
Right.
wouldn't that outside service have less to do?
Well, either way, there's 3.5 people regardless.
Right. I guess what Jane's trying to ask is there the potential of, once we get the books accurate, that instead of using a more expensive outside contract source, that we could possibly
Yeah, this doesn't,
reinvent the position as an inside, less expensive source?
yeah, this doesn't have to be permanent.
Right.
Right. Absolutely
Because
does
the
not have to
audit's
be.
separate altogether anyways.
Right, and that's another thing too, is that if we went in that direction to outsource it, they would prepare for the audit.
Which is a huge amount of
It is
time.
huge amount of time. We're working on, right now, we're working on the audit and we're working on the workers' comp audit. So there's a lot going on back there and it's difficult when you only have 2 people and they're at the window all the time. I can't stress it enough. I don't, and if
Heather?
I'm not being heard, I don't know what to say.
I know that we're not gonna make this decision. It isn't our decision to make. I think there is something to be said for the institutional knowledge once it's fixed, doesn't leave with a person, it stays with the entity, and that we wouldn't be paying medical benefits and payroll taxes and all of that if we contract out. It is a lot of money to contract out, so but we're not charged with that decision. So
And
I had a budget specific question. Are we going there or?
Yep, go ahead.
Still on
Yeah,
there?
let's move it on.
So one of the things that I had a question about was when an employee doesn't take the health plan,
mhm.
they get a stipend, and I'm curious as to why
Come on,
that's not a
I can't
fixed
see.
number.
We lost your face.
You can still hear it.
Yeah.
We got a low battery.
Okay, yeah. Well, so I'm sorry, because you went off, you went off the screen, so it was a distraction to me.
We
Sorry,
might have to take
so-
a pee break and put her on another screen.
So they get $1,200 if they don't take a health insurance plan.
Correct.
And when I'm looking at the budget, that's not $1,200, and I've seen that in a couple different places. So I'm just wondering, what is it a percentage? And so like they work more hours, so they're back. Can you just explain why that's not that fixed number?
What's not the fixed number?
Does everybody get 1,200 no matter how long they work?
Yeah. Yeah, if they don't take insurance, they get $1,200.
It's a
Right.
stipend.
So like the town clerk, so line 1007, she doesn't take insurance, so she gets $1,200, but in the budget, it's 1347.
Yeah, I don't know.
Same thing-
I can't answer that, Heather, because I'd have to run the 107 report to see what exactly that was.
Okay.
I don't know. I can't,
Okay.
I don't,
That's okay. If
Yeah.
you don't know, you don't know. That's fair. I just wondered why it wasn't the fixed number. Maybe I don't know either. But
and then see how the CEO benefits down there. His number is 120210.
right.
I don't know why there's a difference there.
Okay.
But thanks for asking that anyway.
Are there other elements of the administration budget that people would like to discuss? I'd like to bring up one. And Jerry, please do not interpret this as not trusting you. Just doing what I think, a question I'll be asking that others will be asking as well. I have a problem with the request for a contingency fund. I think you already have a contingency amount built into this budget. Maybe you're just not aware of it. So you have more than enough to cover for a contingency in this budget.
I'll pass one.
And
Jane, here's the.
if I've done my figures correctly.
Can you hear okay?
Where is the
Heather?
contingency fund? in this?
Yes, thank
So
you.
contingency fund would be line 4528 toward the bottom.
Oh,
I just went back 4 years. That's what I happen to have the paperwork from the last 4 years. Each year we put away $10,000 for legal fees. And last year we only used $29.91 of that. So we had a balance of $7,000. And that was 2022. 2021 we had a balance of $7,745. In 2020 we had a balance of $5,636. And in 2019 we used quite a bit of legal fees, and our balance was only $19.91. We've also done quite well with the administrative budget, in that we've come under budget each of the past 4 years. In 2022, we underspent the administration budget by $31,208. In 2021, we underspent by $30,743. In 2020, we underspent by $7,916. And in 2019, we underspent by $5,465. So when you add up the amounts that we underspent the administration budget, which is a good thing, and the fact that we unspent in legal fees, the amount of dollars that would have been available were a contingency request needed. In 2022, there would have been $38,217 not used out of the budget, which is more than twice the amount that you're stating is needed as a contingency fund. In 2021, that amount was $38,488. In 2020, the amount available would have been $13,552. And in 2019, the amount would have been $7,456. So unless I'm reading something wrong, the request for an additional $15,000 set aside for a contingency fund is not needed.
Right, so you never,
I'm sorry.
all right, so you didn't have a question, you were just making a comment?
You're stating.
Yeah, I'm just saying.
Okay.
So
Jane?
I would have to say that I think it was in 2021, we didn't have a code enforcer. And Calvin did part of that job. So I think that's probably why we didn't spend the money. So I think those big chunks, there's probably reasons why they were not spent.
Joe cut them out in half. The fact that we, in 3 out of 4 years, certainly didn't come anywhere close of spending what we've budgeted for legal fees makes it an inherent contingency fund in my viewpoint.
Sounds like you're leading up to a motion.
Not yet. Now all there's people who have something to say.
So in part, in the theory and philosophy, I like a contingency line, because the way I hope and feel it would be used and interpreted is we're not borrowing from Peter to pay for Paul. The deputy clerk, we put aside, $60,000. We were able to hire somebody for 30. I didn't then go, woohoo, I got $30,000 to play with as contingency. But so I guess I'm curious to know because this is your budget.
Mhm.
So if you do have contingency and you do have lines where you have, positions, insurance amounts and things like that, what is your philosophy and plan of this budget if specific line items don't get spent and matched to their point, do you see that as additional contingency funds?
It depends. Where you spend that money has to pass the straight face test when you're in your budget. So let me give you an example. You're not gonna pay, this is just a electricity bill with your legal funds. That doesn't, so you're all, I think, used to just because it's within the article, you can just spend it wherever you want.
And that has
That's-
been what we
that's
hear the
not
select board
really-
saying. Yeah.
That ethically, that's not okay. I mean, it really does have to pass the straight face test.
So
So
you're,
that's how I always did it in my budget before I came here. And every department in the city that I came from before has a contingency line because you just don't know. Now, notes going off on legal fees. Well, we don't know what we're gonna have for legal fees in 2023. So you don't want to minimize that line because if we get in hot water or for whatever reason and we need that legal help and we don't have it in the budget, you're really playing with fire there. So it's better in that case in legal, it's better to have it and not need it.
so your,
Need it and not have it.
so your philosophy is not, and I don't want to put words in your mouth,
Right.
so I apologize ahead of time. So maybe I should rephrase this. What I have heard repeatedly at select board meetings is, as long as you have the money in your budget,
Mhm.
as long as you have the money in your budget, as long as you can find the money in your budget. So you're saying to me, that's not your philosophy. You're not looking at the bottom line number. You're looking at each individual line
Right,
number.
but I think their point is you have a budget line in the article and you got to stay within that.
Right,
You know what I'm saying? I think that's what I'm assuming they're doing.
right. They're saying they don't care
Oh.
what individual line it comes out of, as long as that bottom warrant number isn't exceeded, they're
Right.
okay.
Right. So like the contingency line here, like the clerk who gets $1,200 could come up to me tomorrow and say, I've had a family issue. I need full family insurance.
Mhm.
That's where the contingency line comes in. I can't take that out of legal. I can't take that out of something else. I have to, right? I mean, so that's why the contingency line's there. And if you don't use it, it just rolls back into undesignated. But without it, we haven't, now this is what I did. We haven't reconciled our bank statement since April of 2021. So I'm working on getting that done, hired someone. I didn't have a contingency line, so I'm taking it out of legal. I had no other place to take it.
But you're saying in the future, you wouldn't do that.
If I had a contingency line, I would prefer to take it out of that.
Okay, so I'm asking these questions because, again, you're talking about the culture of this town.
Right. Well,
Culture of this town is if there's $550,000 to spend, it could get spent, no matter what line you want to put it in or how you want to jumble. The way it gets presented to the town, okay? Because the town doesn't see all these individual lines.
Mhm.
The town sees the bottom number.
Mhm.
And so the way I've interpreted it is it's now just a big combination of a bunch of cereals and you take out the scoops where you want to take it out. And I'm just presenting that as kind of educational to you because I don't like the fact that we've got it's not that I don't like. I'm scared of the fact that we have padding in lines. And when I say the word padding, I'll explain it.
Yeah.
We have the deputy tax collector / treasurer position open,
Mhm.
right? With their benefits.
Mhm.
So we got $24,500 with their benefits.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
that count. Yeah.
Now, on one hand, you have said that means I've got $74,500 to hire a contractor.
That money's available, yes.
Right, right. But then on the other hand, you're saying, I'm not going to move money from one line to another line.
Well, this is either gonna do one or the other. It's either gonna hire a contractor or we're gonna hire in-house.
So.
So it's still the same,
Right.
same.
So the townspeople just, they only see this bottom number of
Right.
550,000 and the fact that you want a 23% increase in your budget, which is hopefully we have defibrillators available at the town meeting. 'Cause
Right, and
people, it's going to be
It's
a
o-
sticker shock.
yeah, it is, and I understand it.
I think we have to be careful on committing to something because part of the selectman's role and the manager's role is to say something came in fuel and maybe this is a bad budget because other than salaries, he doesn't have a lot of big,
Yeah,
numbers
I
that he has to play in. But on fuel for public works or whatever, if it goes back up to almost $5, they have to be able to take money from it. Last year, Calvin didn't pave
Right.
roads. So I think we need to be careful and say, we're approving these numbers on a budget and you can't exceed that particular line. I mean, I hear what you're saying, and I don't know if that's reviewed frequently by the selectmen and they say, hey, we approve, not you moving money around, but I don't want to tie a manager's hands that
I
they
don't-
can't move money.
I don't either. I'm just trying to get a better idea of the philosophy, because if we're just padding the budget by $15,000, then Milton has a point where we've got a history where, and apologize, I'm sure I'm not using the proper terms and I don't mean them disrespectfully, but we have padded the budget by, even 2019 and 2020, if I remember correctly, positions were filled here. And we had padded budgets by $7,400 and $13,500. And so we're now wanting to pad it an additional $15,000.
Well, I'm not sure. I didn't follow you on that. Where's the padding?
Going off
All
of
that.
his, like the money that was left over, that past people have considered that contingency money.
Yeah, but you're never gonna know at the end of any year what that number is going to be.
No,
You
you're
know,
not.
I mean, like Calvin's, well, we've been having a really good winter. Maybe he wouldn't use as much salt as he would in the typical year. Next year, he may use a whole heck of a lot more. You just don't know. So I mean, all these budget numbers are really a forecast because we don't know what 2023 brings. And like, let's just say that we do get someone in-house for the deputy treasurer, right? And there's that money, and I know you might see it as that's padded because we don't know what they're going to take for insurance. Let's just say they do. And then either the codes or the other guy says, I need family insurance now, something's happened. There's no padding in this budget to pay for that.
So, we haven't gone over budget. The administration budget has not gone over for quite a while, and that's a good thing. And I think part of the reason why it hasn't gone over is because each year that the budget's been built, the amount proposed for the new year is based on what was the amount budgeted from the previous year. It's not based on what was the actual. So when someone says, well, we only increased the budget for a line item by, 1%, it was 1% over what was budgeted the previous year, but we might have way underspent the actual. So it's just inherent that we typically we've been coming out ahead, and it's a good thing. So that's one point. And the second point is the argument, it comes up very frequently when we have these budget meetings is, so if we raise too much money, it goes back into the undesignated funds. But that's not our role to raise money to build up our undesignated fund account. We've been doing so, and now the undesignated fund is probably the highest it's ever been in our town. So we don't need to relax on our laurels that if we do raise too much money, it goes back into undesignated funds. We shouldn't be unnecessarily taxing our residents. It's the same on the state level. The state is making a big deal out of giving everybody $450 back in rebates, but they overtaxed everybody. They should have overtaxed us in the first place. They're giving back money that didn't necessarily have to be raised. It's not that we're getting a present back. So I just want to be careful when if that anyone gets into the mindset. So if we overraise, well, we're not really losing anything because it goes back into undesignated. Our undesignated fund is really healthy right now. We've done a good job. We should continue the course. I recognize you, Heather.
I agree with what you just said, Milt. And that's a position that I was advocating for last year, for sure. I would just like for people to consider, Jerry's been hired, and we were all asking for someone to come in and look at things with a fresh set of eyes. And he's identified these areas where we need, to do some work. And I just, in my mind, what I'm saying is, like he took the mowing out of, it took that contract out and gave that to the Public Works Department to do in-house. And the sentiment is that if it doesn't work, we'll go back to a contract situation. And I'd just like for maybe people to consider doing that same thing with this line. We are all on 3-year terms, and we'll all sit on this committee again next year. And if Jerry comes back and can't justify the contingency line or how that money was spent, I think at that point we could say this wasn't a good idea. I mean, we don't have the ultimate say, but if we reduce that line by that amount, and that's the reason why when we go to town floor, I think that people on town floor listen to us. So I'm kind of in between on where I stand with this, but I also feel like, I do appreciate that he is looking at things with a fresh set of eyes, and I'd just like for us to consider that.
Jill.
I want to go back to the Department 4 section of your budget.
Okay.
So the difference between what you're requesting for the personnel budget for 2023 versus what was budgeted for in 2022 is a difference of $78,363.
Mhm.
And you're stating that the difference between the two budgets is increasing up one person from part-time to full-time.
Yes.
And I hope it's safe to say that a person going from part-time to full-time isn't going to make an additional $78,000.
Mhm.
So where is the rest of this money
So the
that
money,
you're not responsible? Okay. That kind of you inherited from the select board, and the last two managers last year made changes to the budget and this personnel section.
one more time, it's getting like.
Yeah.
Well, you can get out the manager proposed 2023 budget and look, Jill. I mean, it's, the town clerk salary's been raised, going more hours, and just look at each line.
And it
Well, I'm
includes,
curious-
this salary includes the 5%.
Some of it is changes that were made last year that unless we're going to go up to someone and say, we really like you, but you get a 10% pay decrease, we can't really do that. So I'm kind of curious to know what is the fixed amount and what is the proposed change? Like the proposed change is a 5% COLA raise to everybody.
Right.
The
that's
proposed change is a half a
person.
person. So what is that total in the personnel line?
I'd have to add it. I'd have to add that up.
Okay.
But it's all right here. I'd have to just do the,
And I only ask because again, when you're going to town hall, they're going to see it's a 26% increase. And in reality,
I don't think it really is. though.
well, that's why I'm saying. you
This
get
is a
it.
spreadsheet that I just took because
Yeah.
it was already
So
developed.
that's why
I
I'm
didn't have time to
curious,
reinvent it.
what's reality and what's this spreadsheet?
Then I can, I probably should have, well, it's just another plate I gotta spin, but I should probably put that together.
So,
And just so it's clear, but it really is just adding another half person in a and a 5% raise and just bumping up the deputy treasurer's
And then
pay.
now I have an odd question, and if it's not appropriate, feel free to tell me. But I understand COLA is 5%. Okay? If I'm making $100,000 and he's making $20,000, so I can't do the math this late. I get $5,000 and he gets
Well,
$400. Cost of living, our eggs cost the same. So why, does anybody understand why it's a percentage of your income and not just a set amount?
typically raises are done by percent, you know?
Well, COLA is separate. I mean, that becomes the issue. COLA is truly a cost of living allowance. And then a lot of people then add performance bonuses or.
No, and I understand
Yeah.
that, but I mean, COLA is a percentage, and you would think cost of living allowance would be more of a set amount, because it didn't cost me more money to live this year than it's costing Mark, unless, of course, I'm being extravagant.
You have a different standard of living. The
Right.
person
Yeah,
making
yeah.
$100,000 has a different standard of living than the person making 20.
And it's all about competitive salaries.
I have a bigger car.
Right.
I'm making
It's a convenient
$100,000.
tool. And actually COLA is by region in the country. Not everyone buys fuel oil.
Right.
So it's all over the place.
And you don't want to penalize.
Your house?
Sure, anytime.
Hey, just, Heather's not on the screen anymore.
What?
We lost her again.
Well, I
So-
got plenty of batteries, so I don't know.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I don't know if we're ready to vote on this or not. I'm opposed to the contingency fund. I'm also opposed to adding a halftime person on the counter, but I'm going to vote for it. I'm not sure why I'm going to vote for it, but I'm going to vote for it. One of the things I said when we were looking for a town manager this last time was, we need somebody who can do what was done in the past, which was man the counter.
Town
And-
managers don't do that.
Yeah, they do.
No, they don't.
Well, so this is part of the problem we have. So we didn't need a town manager then.
Well, that's, and you can vote to get me out. However you want to do it. I mean, I know, I understand, but
Let him speak.
I'm just talking.
Yeah.
We can't do that. We can't, in fact, vote you out without a major effort,
yeah.
major effort. And it's probably unlikely to happen. So I'm going to vote for the full-time position. So are we ready to vote?
Well, you're certainly have the right to make a
So
motion.
I'd like to make a motion, Mr. Chairman, that we change us.
You can do the total amount, and then if you want to explain.
That
it.
we appropriate $535,915 for the administrative budget, which is the total less the 15,000.
And I'll second that. So it's just for the sake of discussion, it's been moved by Neil and seconded by Milt that we raise and appropriate $535,915 for the administration operation budget. Discussion. Yes,
Okay.
sir.
I like the contingency line simply because I think what Jerry's been saying to me and what I've heard from him is he's trying to make a realistic budget here. And by having that $15,000 contingency line, if he has a variation from his budget, rather than pull it out of some other line, and next year when we're going over budgets, we're saying, Jerry, why were you so high over this? He has to explain it. He can say, okay, I've hit all of my budget lines pretty close. I get the contingency line. We had 15,000 there. I spent 6 and it was for this. So it's really clean, really neat, really easy to follow. And that's what I like.
So that makes sense, but we have been for as I can't tell you how many years, but the select board has told us that over and over and over again that we have no say in what monies get moved from these different lines. And all we're voting on is if it was the select board's choice, I believe, we would only be seeing on a piece of paper the figure $550,000, and we'd be voting yay or nay. The fact, and I'm not challenging you, sir. I all the comments that Heather said positively about you, I stamp my approval as well. I'm just basing it on my experience, my education, my time working on this committee. We've been told that if you came up short on a particular line item, and if you needed to pay for legal fees or needed a contingency, you'd find it within your budget. So that's why, even though I respect your point of view, it's just based on history. And you're right, and I do agree with, we got to let him do his job and prove his value to the town. But it's hard for me to go against history, number one. Number two, the point I made a few minutes ago is that a budget seems to always be built on what was previously budgeted, not what was actually spent. And so the budgeted amount seems to always to be a little higher than it needs to be. And so I believe that that money that should there be an emergency that he might need, in the amount of, up to $15,000, it would be there.
Jerry.
So I'm just curious on your 21 and 22 budget where you've got these 31 in administration budget. Was that because of employees leaving and there was a
Positions were
gap,
open.
and that's why there's such a big number there?
So that was pointed out to me, and so what I proposed is cut that in half, because that will now equal 2019 and 2020.
To kind of, again, try and fit in a little bit, and Joe, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. One of the reasons I suspect that they were able to offer you more money than what we offered Kathy is because they still had it in the bottom line budget.
I don't know. I just went in.
Well,
Because-
that's absolutely true.
Because
Can I get
otherwise.
some credit for my negotiation skills?
But I think that's, again, the culture you're running into, right?
Mhm.
Like, I think we all want to trust you. And I think we all do. Like, we're excited for you wanting to kind of get the lines, each line where they're supposed to be, right? But if you get tarred skinned and feathered at the town hall meeting and leave the next day, then the select board gets to hire the next town manager at an additional $15,000
Yeah,
because it's in the contingency line.
Right, that's whenever, so just history will tell you whenever people leave and then you hire, it always costs a ton.
I know it always costs more, and I understand
don't
that,
wanna-
and I'm
I'm not
not,
gonna
that's
do
why I'm
that
saying
to
I'm
you
not,
folks. It's just-
and Kevin, I'm not throwing you under the bus, buddy, I'm not, really. I'm just, again, trying to show
Yeah.
that's the gripple that I'm literally having with all my voices in my head, is that there's one bus and philosophy that it really is just the bottom line, and that's what we hear all the time.
Yeah.
As long as you don't go over your bottom line budget, go for it. But I hear your philosophy too, and I like that too, where I don't feel comfortable using a lawyer to pay,
Electricity. bill.
electricity bill and things like that. And I appreciate that too.
You're forgetting his introductory speech to us, though, which was just what she's saying. All he cares about the bottom line.
The impact to the budget, yeah, that's what I was saying, you gotta look at that. What are you doing? What's the budget really do to the
What you
mill
said was,
rate?
tell me what I can spend. Give me the increase and I'll take care of it. Let me do my job.
I don't believe
No,
it.
that's what you said, sir.
Is there any, yes,
You
Jane?
should look at the tape.
So I think one of the things that we should think about as a group though is, and I will be the first to say, I did not vote to hire a town manager.
Neither did Mark, and he came in and
Totally
told me.
honest with you. So,
Oh, that's fine.
but when we had our first town manager, 8 months, you have to think about what got done in 8 months and what he's done since he's been here.
Oh, no, and I definitely
It's like
applaud
night
him.
and
It's
day.
night and day.
Call
for the question,
Okay.
call for the motion, please.
That has to be for a vote, go for a vote, in case there's any more discussion. So there's a motion to call for the vote. All those in favor? All those opposed? I'm opposed if there's any more discussion, but the vote, the vote to move the vote passed. 7 or looked like 7 to 1.
Yeah,
Did you-
I voted no.
All right, so 6 to 2. So we'll call the vote. And the motion on the floor is that the town raises and appropriates $535,915 for the administration operation budget. All those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh,
We don't have Heather.
we don't have Heather. That's gonna be
Oh,
hard.
oh, she's gone.
She's, yeah,
What,
I've been
can we
trying
get
to
the count
contact
again?
her.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We'd make it a vote either way.
Super.
Okay, and we're right on, we're 3 minutes ahead of time. So on Thursday, we have all the other administration, all those other accounts. We'll also have the Public Works here. If Calvin is here right at 6:30, we'll offer him the same courtesy and do him first. And then
me last.
if that works for you.
I can make it.
Otherwise, we won't be able to tell him what time to be
Yeah, I'll
here.
make it work. I'll work with you. That's no problem.
You're still gonna talk to me?
Oh, yeah.
I need a motion to adjourn.
I second.
Thank you. Good night, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good meeting.
Hey, Jerry,
Yeah.
you are head over heels beyond the two guys we